Chapter 156. Chu Xiu's method was simple and crude, which made Du Guangzhong dumbfounded. However, when he thought about it carefully, he realized that it was indeed the case. The death of a Jianghu constable wasn't a big deal. As long as no one disclosed it, the higher-ups wouldn't investigate it. Chu Xiu's immediate superior was Wei Jiuduan. Would Wei Jiuduan investigate the death of an ordinary Jianghu constable? Wouldn't he be busy to death? As long as the reason and evidence were sufficient, it was fine to report it without arousing suspicion. Du Guangzhong hesitated, and Wu Saiping's subordinates, kill them all. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said lightly. "Wh. What?" Du Guangzhong doubted his hearing. "Your Excellency," Wu Saiping had dozens of subordinates. "Kill them all?" Lu Qingli and Qin Fang also looked at Chu Xiu in bewilderment. Killing dozens of people in one breath, what was Chu Xiu going to do? Was he going to break up the whole inspector hall? Chu Xiu said lightly, "Constable Du, you told me about Wu Saiping's background. He was originally a Jianghu bandit. His Jianghu temperament was too heavy. He was different from you Jianghu constables who were trained in the Guangzhong torture room. You used the rules of the Guangzhong torture room to restrain your subordinates, while he relied on the so-called Jianghu Code of Brotherhood. Although you don't like it, I have to say that his subordinates are far more loyal than yours. Moreover, none of Wu Saiping's subordinates came from the Guangzhong torture room. Almost all of them were born in the Jianghu. They were blinded by the so-called Brotherhood, so it's hard to say what they would do. Wu Saiping is already dead. I don't want to cause any trouble because of a dead man." Du Guangzhong and the other two didn't look good. In fact, it was true. The loyalty of their subordinates could only be said to be ordinary. In the past, they didn't like Wu Saiping's Jianghu habits, but the loyalty of Wu Saiping's subordinates was much stronger than theirs. "I'll leave this matter to you three. I only want the result," Chu Xiu ordered. Lu Qingli asked in surprise, "Us?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "If it wasn't you, could it be me? If I do everything myself, what's the use of you guys then?" Lu Qingli and the other two looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They knew what this meant. This was their proof of allegiance to Chu Xiu. If they killed the people on Wu Saiping's side, they would also have something that could be used against them by Chu Xiu. They could not find a reason to betray him, nor did they want to. Therefore, the three of them could only cup their hands and leave with Wu Saiping's corpse. The Jianzhou City Patrol Hall had jurisdiction over more than 10 small cities around it. They were not too far away. The furthest place could be reached in 2 or 3 days on horseback. Moreover, this time, they had decided to submit to Chu Xiu, so they had to show their sincerity. Therefore, they gathered all the Jianghu constables under them and gathered them in a run-down temple outside the city under Wu Saiping's name. They said that there was a mission for them. At this time, in the run-down temple outside Jianzhou City, more than 50 Jianghu constables were gathered. They all looked puzzled. Since the death of the previous patrol Fang Jinyuan, they hadn't made such a big move in a long time. Could it be that the new patrol was up to something? One of the warriors asked a bald warrior beside him, "Brother Sun, what is Lord Wu planning to do by gathering us here? Is something big going to happen? You are always by Lord Wu's side. You should know the news." The bald warrior touched his bald head and said doubtfully, "I don't know either." After the new patrol called Lord Wu and the others to the meeting hall, he acted mysteriously and gathered everyone together. "I don't know what he's up to. However, you don't have to worry. The new patrol is only in the physical invulnerability realm. He got in because of his connections. What right does he have to be above Lord Wu? In the future, the patrol hall will still respect Lord Wu." While everyone was discussing, Du Guangzhong and the other two walked into the rundown temple. Du Guangzhong's personality was a little awkward to do such things, so he let Lu Qingli do it. Lu Qingli had been in the Guangzhong torture room for more than 20 years. His seniority was second only to Du Guangzhong. However, unlike Du Guangzhong who was more old-fashioned and rigid, Lu Qingli was short and fat. He always had a smiling expression on his face and looked harmless. He usually spoke in a friendly manner, so the ordinary constables and bailiffs didn't really fear him. Seeing Lu Qingli, the bald warrior under Wu Siping asked curiously, "Lord Lu, where is Lord Wu?" Lu Qingli smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll send you to see Lord Wu." The people under Wu Siping didn't react, but the bald warrior felt that something was wrong. What did he mean by sending them to see Lord Wu? However, before he could object, Lu Qingli waved his hand with a smile on his face and said softly, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of bowstrings exploding could be heard from outside the dilapidated temple. Dozens of huge crossbow bolts as thick as an arm were shot at the same time, directly penetrating the wall and immediately killing half of the warriors under Wu Siping. After a round of crossbow bolts, more than 30 Jianghu constables, the weakest of whom was in the Xiantian stage, rushed into the rundown temple and started a massacre with Lu Qingli and the other two. After all, Wu Siping had more than 50 people under him. Although Lu Qingli and the others were physical invulnerability experts, they couldn't kill them all in a short time. It would be troublesome if even one of them escaped. Therefore, they also brought their trusted subordinates to attack. Although there weren't many of them, they were all powerful and reliable confidants. Moreover, Lu Qingli had slyly ordered the others to use the siege-breaking crossbow to ambush and kill half of the enemy. This kind of siege-breaking crossbow was used by armies to attack cities. There were many of them in the Guangzhong Disciplinary Hall, but they were used to apprehend martial artists who cultivated their bodies. Ordinary Xiantian martial artists would have to expend a great deal of effort to defend against them. Those below the Xiantian realm would have no choice but to dodge. In the midst of the massacre, the warriors under Wu Siping were still in a state of confusion. They couldn't understand why their comrades would suddenly kill them. Where was their lord? Unfortunately, under such a crushing situation, they didn't even have time to think. In less than 15 minutes, they were all slaughtered. Shaking off the blood on his saber, Lu Qingli put his palms together and bowed to the corpses on the ground. He said in a low voice, "Everyone, I'm not the one who wants you dead. Even if you become evil spirits, don't look for me in the middle of the night. That official Chu has a murderous aura around him. I reckon he has killed a lot of people. You guys go look for him." Qin Feng couldn't stand Lu Qingli's attitude. He couldn't help but frown and said, "Old Lu, what's the use of acting like this? If you want to kill people, then kill them. If you're really afraid that they'll become evil spirits and come looking for you, why don't you go and do good deeds?" Lu Qingli glanced at him and said, "What do you know? This is a method I learned from the Bodhi Zen monastery's Zen preaching. Do you know what karma is? Do you know what inner demons are?" Qin Feng curled his lips in disdain and said, "Bullsh*t. Those monks have killed a lot of people themselves. What's the use of these fake things? Don't waste time. Burn the corpses and deal with them." They were all experienced constables in Jianghu. What they were best at was investigating all kinds of traces of fighting. This time, they could fake the scene, but it would be too much effort. Anyway, with Lord Chu Xiu taking the blame, they could just push all the blame onto some villains and thieves. They could just say that these warriors died in the line of duty and were cremated and buried. When the higher-ups investigated, there wouldn't be any evidence at all. It was very simple. After dealing with these corpses, the three of them directly brought their men back to the Jian province's inspector hall. They gathered everyone together and formally paid their respects to Lord Chu Xiu. In fact, this step should have been done when Chu Xiu took office. According to the rules, the four of them should have brought all their men to pay their respects to Chu Xiu. Otherwise, as an inspector, wouldn't it be a joke if he didn't know his men? But at that time, Wu Siping had already decided to make Chu Xiu a mere figurehead, so this scene was naturally avoided. Now, it should be regarded as the first step for Chu Xiu to establish his own prestige in the Jian province's inspector hall. At this time, in the martial arts field in the backyard of the inspector hall, nearly 200 constables and constables of the Jian province's inspector hall gathered here, waiting for Chu Xiu's instructions. As long as one wasn't too stupid, he should be clear about the atmosphere in the inspector hall. The new inspector took office, but they weren't allowed to pay their respects. The attitude of the several lords was already obvious. And how long had it been? In less than half a month, they were called by their lords to pay their respects to the new inspector. This attitude naturally explained everything. The new lord's methods were very sharp. It only took him such a long time to make Wu Saiping and the others completely submit. However, they were still a little puzzled. Why didn't Wu Si and the others' men come? Only the warriors who participated in the battle against Wu Saiping's men remained silent and kept a low profile. After a while, Du Guangzhong and the other two followed behind Chu Xiu to the martial arts field. They stood in front of everyone and bowed to Chu Xiu. "Greetings, Lord." The rest of the inspector hall's constables also bowed to Chu Xiu in unison. "Greetings, Lord." Looking at everyone present, Chu Xiu nodded and said, "There are 5 inspectors under the Guanxi region. Ever since the previous inspector, Lord Fang, died in the line of duty, the Jian province's inspector hall has become the weakest among all the inspectors. However, life and death are decreed by fate. The strength of the Jian province's inspector hall doesn't depend on me, but on you. In the past, you didn't have a chance to fight, but now, I'm giving you this chance." Chapter 157. Chu Xiu's provocative words did not resonate too much with the warriors present. Other than Du Guangzhong and a few of his trusted subordinates who were more active, the rest of the warriors were not too excited. Those who were able to work in the Guangzhong torture room were people who had seen the world. They would not be easily incited. In other words, these people were also very realistic. Those who were capable would study and climb up, while those who were incapable could only see the benefits in front of them. Right now, Chu Xiu had just taken office, and they had not seen any benefits at all. It was obviously impossible for them to serve him with just these words. Of course, Chu Xiu did not care. He only continued, "There is one more thing to report to everyone. When Constable Wu Saiping and his subordinates were hunting down the old demon of the Yin Mountain, De Gufang, who was wanted in the Guangzhong Pass, they were brutally killed by this demon. His subordinates were also slaughtered by this demon and died in the line of duty. I have already had them buried properly. The Guangzhong torture room has also done its best to protect the safety of the Guangzhong Pass over the years. However, your life is your own, so you must be more careful when you carry out missions in the future." As soon as these words came out, the expressions of everyone present changed. Some of the smarter ones seemed to have already figured out what was going on. The old demon of the Yin Mountain, De Gufang, was an expert who had stepped into the realm of 3 flower at one's prominence. He was indeed capable of slaughtering Wu Saiping and the others. However, the problem was that Wu Saiping did not seem like the kind of person who would risk his life to capture such a demon. Moreover, they did not seem to have heard of Wu Saiping taking people out during this period of time. When he thought about it in this way, the reason behind it was obvious. Everyone's hearts turned cold at the same time. Putting aside the ability of this new lord, his actions were ruthless enough. "All right, this matter ends here. Everyone, disperse and continue patrolling. Constables Du Guangzhong, Lu Qingli, and Qin Fang will be in charge of Wu Saiping's territory." Hearing this, the bailiffs and constables replied loudly, "Yes, sir." This time, their aura was much stronger than before. Since Wu Saiping's subordinates had so many empty places, they naturally had to continue to manage them. In this way, the authority in their hands would also be greater than before. Only when they saw the benefits would they be motivated, right? After everyone left, Chu Xiu called Du Guangzhong and the other two to the study room. After the 3 of them were seated, Chu Xiu asked, "The morale of the constables and constables at Jian province's patrol hall doesn't seem to be very high." Lu Qingli smiled bitterly. "Sir, our Guanxi region has a total of 6 inspectors, but our Jianzhou inspector hall is the weakest. Our income is also the lowest. Of course, our subordinates have no morale." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Is it because of the previous inspector?" Lu Qingli nodded. "More or less. There are 2 main reasons. Firstly, Jian Province's area isn't that big. The other stronger inspectors are even in charge of 2 prefectures at the same time. Furthermore, the previous patrol inspector, Lord Fong, was a little too upright and plain-spoken. His subordinates only received a little salary, but they didn't receive any other benefits. Yet, he always sent his subordinates out to carry out missions to capture those villains that weren't to be trifled with. Although this is the duty of the Guangzhong torture room, we have to at least act according to our capabilities, don't we? Every time we take action, we suffer heavy losses. In the end, even if we manage to capture someone, the rewards given by the higher-ups are pitifully small. Sir Fong isn't greedy. He gives all the rewards to the brothers under him, but that little bit of money isn't even enough to fill the gaps between a few hundred people. Lu Qingli's tone was filled with resentment. Obstructing one's path to wealth was akin to killing one's parents. Although the previous inspector, Fang Jingyuan, was their superior, they still hated him to the core. Looking at the people from the other inspectors' hall eating the meat, while they didn't even get to drink the soup, of course they weren't happy. Chu Xiu agreed with Lu Qingli's words. People's hearts were different. If you wanted to be a saint, but you didn't consider the benefits of your subordinates and wanted them to be saints, you naturally wouldn't be popular. In the past, when Chu Kuanga commanded the Guangzhong torture room, he relied on his personal charisma. He took the lead in everything, and the others were willing to follow him. Meanwhile, Guan Siyu commanded the Guangzhong torture room because of his power. Even though Guan Siyu was impartial and merciless, and even gave the warriors in the Guangzhong torture room very little salary, he was the one who turned the Guangzhong torture room, which could only survive in the cracks, into a military organization that was recognized by the 3 countries. Moreover, Guan Siyu wasn't greedy for power. The 4 disciplinary officers, numerous inspectors, and the disciplinary bureau's secret agents all possessed extremely shocking power. So, they were naturally willing to pledge loyalty to Guan Siyu. As for Chu Xiu, the former Fang Jingyuan, his personal charisma was naturally not as good as Chu Kuanga's, and his ability was not as good as Guan Siyu's. However, he wanted to learn from these 2 outstanding people. Even though he had no qualms about it, his subordinates still complained. At this time, Qin Fang suddenly said, "Now there is another reason why the morale of our Jianzhou Inspector Hall is low. That is, in the small cities around the Jianzhou Prefecture, there is not much power left in our Inspector Hall. The local martial arts forces don't take us seriously. The one who caused this was that Lord Fang. He was the one who wanted to die, and now, he's played himself to death." Du Guangzhong frowned and said, "Old Qin, don't talk nonsense." It was the sentencing officer who personally sent people to investigate how Lord Fang died. The matter has been settled. It was just an accident. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly became interested. He directly said to Qin Fang, "Tell me. It doesn't matter. We are all on the same side. Is there any secret about the death of the previous inspector Fang Jinyuan?" Logically speaking, the Guangzhong torture room was the ruler of the entire Guangzhong area. Although the Guangzhong area was a mix of good people and bad people, no matter how arrogant you were, you would still be under the jurisdiction of the Guangzhong torture room. However, now Qin Fang said that the Jianzhou Inspector Hall had no power in the entire Jianzhou Prefecture. This was very strange. Moreover, there was nothing suspicious about the death of the previous inspector, Fang Jinyuan. He was killed by Han Rang, the blood emptiness sword, while he was hunting down a 3-flower realm criminal at one's prominence. Of course, this was certainly not like how Chu Xiu killed Wu Siping. He only secretly gave Fang Jinyuan a reasonable death. Fang Jinyuan attacked in a small city and was killed in front of hundreds of warriors. There was nothing suspicious about it. However, now that Qin Fang said it, could there be an inside story? Qin Fang coughed and said, "Official Chu, since I've already pledged my allegiance to you, there's no point in hiding these things from you. The previous patrol inspector, Fang Jinyuan, was indeed killed in front of everyone. To an outsider, there was nothing strange about it. However, we have followed Fang Jinyuan for many years, and we have a good understanding of his strength. Master Fang's strength can definitely be ranked at the top among the warriors in the realm of 3 flower at one's prominence. As for Han Rang, to put it bluntly, he was just a coward. Usually, he only dared to rob and kill some small merchants in Guangzhong. He didn't even dare to touch the bigger ones. The reason why he was able to become famous was because of the 5th transformation precious weapon, the blood emptiness sword, in his hand. It has the effect of transforming blood qi. If there was enough blood qi, the blood emptiness sword could even be upgraded to a 6th transformation precious weapon. We saw that battle with our own eyes. In the beginning, Master Fang was able to suppress his opponent with just a few moves. However, later on, Master Fang's strength suddenly fell to the extreme, not even reaching the innate realm. In the end, he was killed by Han Rang with a sword. Chu Xiu rubbed his chin and said, "If that's the case, it's not really suspicious. There are all kinds of strange things in Jianghu. Maybe Han Rang used some kind of method to sneak attack Fang Jingyuan and kill him." Qin Fang shook his head and said, "There have been many suspicious points in this matter from the beginning. Han Rang is as timid as a mouse. Before Lord Fang chased after him, he just happened to rob and kill a group of merchants outside a small city in the Jianghu prefecture. According to his character, after committing a crime, he would immediately flee far away, but this time he took the initiative to show himself in front of us. Moreover, when Han Rang showed up, we happened to be at the Jiang family's banquet. After we parted on bad terms, Han Rang seemed to have received the news in advance and deliberately appeared in front of us, attracting Master Fang to attack him. In the end, he was killed. This is the suspicious point." Qin Fang frowned and asked, "Wait, who is this Jiang family? Why is it related to Fang Jingyuan?" Chu Xiu asked with a frown. Qin Fang said, "The Jiang family is one of the major powers in the Jianghu prefecture. They have a long history, almost as long as the time when the Guangzhong torture room was established. Master Fang also knows that the Guangzhong area is the center of trade between the 3 countries. There are countless caravans coming and going, but there are some prohibited items that are clearly prohibited from being traded to prevent them from entering the other country. However, although there are clear prohibitions in the torture room, there are still some people who refuse to mend their ways. Among them, the most serious are some of the local martial arts powers in the Guangzhong area. For example, they buy some prohibited items from northern Yan and sell them to eastern Qi or western Chu. Simply put, it's smuggling. Once this kind of behavior is discovered by the Guangzhong torture room, it will definitely be investigated." At that time, Master Fang suspected that the Jiang family was secretly smuggling these prohibited items, so he questioned the Jiang family. However, the Jiang family refused to admit it, so we didn't find anything. When Master Fang came to the Jiang family for the second time, the Jiang family prepared to bribe Master Fang. However, Master Fang refused and fell out with the Jiang family, saying that he would bring Master Fang back to the torture room to be interrogated and so on. They parted on bad terms on the spot. Official Chu, you also know what happened after that. Master Fang was killed, and the investigation of the Jiang family's smuggling was also left unsettled. Because of this, the Jianzhou Patrol Hall's prestige in the Jianzhou Prefecture's martial arts world was greatly reduced, causing people to think that the Jianzhou Patrol Hall's work is all bark and no bite. Chapter 158. Qin Fang told him what had happened. Chu Xiu immediately felt that something was wrong because everything was too coincidental. Fang Jingyuan had just said that he wanted to investigate the Jiang family, but he was killed in the blink of an eye. Chu Xiu would never believe that there was nothing fishy about this. Since Chu Xiu could easily see through it, the other martial arts forces in the Jianzhou prefecture should also be able to see through it. That was why they felt that the Jianzhou prefecture inspector hall was just a so-so. It was all bark and no bite. Not only could they not find anything, but a dignified inspector had lost his life here. Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Since there are so many suspicious points, why didn't the higher-ups send someone to investigate?" Qin Fang smiled bitterly and said, "Of course they sent someone to investigate, but it was not Lord Wei Jiuduan personally. It was just a Jianghu constable sent by the Guanxi Torture Hall branch to investigate. They didn't investigate the Jiang family, but only Lord Fang's injuries. They didn't find anything unusual. In fact, although we found something wrong, we didn't find anything unusual. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "The Jiang family is such a big suspect, but they didn't investigate them. What's going on? Are the Jianghu constables sent by the higher-ups inferior to you?" Qin Fang coughed and said, "During the penal officer's birthday, the Jiang family once presented a jade Buddha statue. It was made of the heart-clearing warm jade, a specialty of the Chu land. It was extremely precious and could help a martial artist to quickly calm down during seclusion. The penal officer liked it very much, so he specially ordered us not to investigate the Jiang family before we have absolute evidence, lest we make a big fuss." A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. This was blatant bribery. He seemed to have some understanding of his immediate superior's character. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Has the penal officer's character always been like this?" At this moment, Du Guangzhong sighed and said, "Of course not. In the past, when Lord Chu Kuanga was around, the disciplinary officer wouldn't do this. Later, when Lord Guan Siyu became the hall master, orders were strictly enforced. The disciplinary officer didn't dare to do this. It was just that in recent years, the disciplinary officer was getting on in years and was about to retire, so he had to find a way out for himself. That was why he had amassed so much wealth. When Lord Fang Zhengyuan was the patrol inspector, he was a little too stiff. Not only did he not give any benefits to the disciplinary officer, he even gave some worthless calligraphy and paintings to the disciplinary officer for his birthday. He had long lost the disciplinary officer's favor. Wei Hanshan, the inspector of the Shang prefecture, which is right next to the Jian prefecture, is now in charge of not only the Shang prefecture but also the Qin prefecture because he knows how to please the disciplinary officer. He is equivalent to the inspector of these two places. Furthermore, this time, it was you who was sent by the higher-ups to be the Jian prefecture's patrol envoy. If you hadn't come, I heard that Wei Hanshan would still be collecting treasures and preparing to persuade the disciplinary officer to let him manage the Jian prefecture's affairs as well." Chu Xiu thought about it. He seemed to have some impression of Wei Hanshan. He was very arrogant and obviously did not put him, the new patrol inspector, in his eyes. His attitude was not good. However, from the looks of it, it was probably because Chu Xiu was in his way. The disciplinary officer has gone overboard. Isn't the main hall going to do something about it? Du Guangzhong gritted his teeth and said, "Official Chu, these words are actually a little taboo, but it doesn't matter now. In the early years, when Lord Guan Siyu had just taken control of the Guanzhong torture room, the entire Guanzhong torture room was absolutely strict. No one dared to make a mistake. In recent years, although the Guanzhong torture room has become more and more powerful, Lord Guan Siyu has been a little slack. His superiors follow suit. Even the main hall is like this, not to mention the subordinates. All of this is because of that woman. Ever since Lord Guan Siyu married that woman, his actions have become more and more incomprehensible. Femme fatale, Lord Guan is no longer the Lord Guan of the past." Du Guangzhong's tone carried some resentment. He was a veteran of the Guanzhong torture room. He had experienced the era of Chu Kuanga and the early days of the Guanzhong torture room's rise. He missed that period of time very much. But now, the Guanzhong torture room had changed. It had changed so much that he didn't even recognize it. He himself had also changed. Even he, who didn't dare to be greedy, had conspired with Wu Siping to withhold the tax revenue under the bewitchment of Wu Siping. Lu Qingli, who was at the side, shouted in a low voice, "Old Du! Are you crazy? You dare to say anything? If you say this outside, you won't be the only one in trouble. You'll even implicate us." Du Guangzhong said lightly, "I've wanted to say this for a long time, but I'm not an idiot. Of course, I won't say this outside." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about it. We're all on the same side now. Of course, I won't say it outside." As he said this, Chu Xiu couldn't help but think of Guan Siyu's wife, Mei Qinglian. That extremely seductive woman. However, Chu Xiu had seen Guan Siyu before. She was decisive and had a clear mind. Just from the way she talked and behaved, this chief of the Guangzhong torture room wasn't an idiot who would be bewitched by a woman. Chu Xiu wasn't interested in the secrets of important figures for the time being. He only said to Du Guangzhong and the other two, "Come with me to the Jiang family tomorrow." Du Guangzhong said in surprise, "Official Chu wants to investigate the death of Du Guangzhong?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "I have nothing to do with Fang Jinyuan. Why would I investigate that? Moreover, this matter has already been decided by the disciplinary officer. Even if I find evidence and go to the disciplinary officer to reverse the verdict, it will only be a slap to the disciplinary officer's face. However, the one who started the trouble had to be the one who started it. Since the Jianzhou patrol hall suffered a loss at the hands of the Jiang family, we naturally have to get it back from the Jiang family. Moreover, our patrol hall also needs some new sources of income. Not to mention the danger of being blackmailed by others, we won't be able to get much money. It's not worth it." Du Guangzhong and the other two looked at each other and didn't say anything. Now that they had expressed their allegiance to Chu Xiu, they would naturally do whatever Chu Xiu said. Of course, that was unless they were going to die. If Chu Xiu really wanted them to die, they naturally wouldn't foolishly charge forward. The next morning, Chu Xiu brought Du Guangzhong and the other two, as well as some accompanying constables to the Jiang family. The Jiang family was located in a small city called Qi City. This small city used to be a large villa owned by the Qi family. Later on, the Qi family was destroyed, and the small villa was occupied by many outsiders. In the end, it developed into a small city. The Jiang family's strength was considered to be at the top of the Jianzhou prefecture. The great ancestor of the Jiang family had the strength of the three-flower realm at one's prominence. However, because he was old, he no longer cared about the family's affairs. He spent all his time cultivating in the inner house. The position of the family leader had already been handed over, and the family's affairs had also been handed over to the next generation. After arriving in Qi City, Lu Qingli introduced, "Sir, the Jiang family has a strong foundation in the Jianzhou prefecture, especially in this Qi City. The Jiang family has been in business for several generations. It's even called Jiang Bansheng, which means that half of the business in Qi City belongs to the Jiang family." Chu Xiu asked, "Is there anyone in the inspector's office in Qi City?" Lu Qingli was a little embarrassed as he said, "There is, but there's only an innate stage constable and a few ordinary constables. Usually, they're only in charge of petty theft and the like. Their words are basically useless when it comes to important matters." The Jianghu constable in charge of Qi City happened to be Lu Qingli's subordinate, which was why he seemed a little embarrassed. Chu Xiu didn't mind and said, "Go to the Jiang family." At this time, in the Jiang family leader, Jiangxi Chen, was sitting in the main seat, listening to the servant's report with a puzzled look in his eyes. Obviously, he didn't expect the new inspector to come to the Jiang family at this time. The expression of an old man below him changed a little as he said, "Master, is this new inspector here to investigate the matter of the previous inspector, Fang Jinyuan? Back then, I advised you that the Jiang family was so careful and didn't leave any evidence behind. If Fang Jinyuan wants to investigate, just let him. Moreover, we've been filial to the disciplinary officer. When the time comes, just let the disciplinary officer put pressure on him. But you didn't listen and insisted on plotting against Fang Jinyuan. You colluded with the blood emptiness sword Han Rang to kill Fang Jinyuan. Great, now you've left something that can be used against you. Killing an inspector of the Guangzhong torture room, if this is discovered, it'll be a crime punishable by the annihilation of the entire family." Jiangxi Chen looked at the elder in disgust. Everything about the Jiang family was good, except for these old things who were always greedy for power and talked nonsense here. These elders were of the same generation as the Jiang family's great ancestor. In the end, the great ancestor had gone into closed-door cultivation and didn't care about the family's affairs, but these old fellows were still a hindrance here. Before Jiangxi Chen could say anything, a Jiang family martial artist in his 40s, stood up and snorted coldly. Let's investigate then. The Guanxi Torture Hall branch has already concluded that it was just an accident. Han Rang has also completely left Guangzhong, and even Fang Jingyuan's corpse has been cremated. What can this new inspector find out? Moreover, during Lord Wei's birthday celebration, our Jiang family took out 1/5 of our family's assets to create that heartwarming jade Buddha statue. It won't be so easy for this new inspector to touch our Jiang family. On the other hand, if the few of you panic and lose your composure, you'll be causing trouble for our Jiang family. This person was Jiangxi Chen's younger half-brother, Jiang Yao. He had been on Jiangxi Chen's side since he was young. Now that he saw these elders' fearful expressions, he couldn't help but feel angry. The elder shouted sternly, "You brat! How dare you speak to I like this? Do you still have any respect for the rules? Do you have any respect for your seniors?" Jiangxi Chen waved his hand and said, "All right, stop arguing. Why are you arguing when you haven't even seen the person? Go invite the new inspector in. Our Jiang family has been in Jianzhou for nearly 300 years. What's there to be afraid of here with our foundation? At most, we'll just deal with whatever comes our way." Chapter 159. The Jiang family welcomed Chu Xiu politely into the main hall. Jiang Shichen cupped his hands at Lu Qingli, who was the first to enter. "Lord Lu, you haven't been here for some time. May I know what brings you here this time?" In the Jianzhou prefecture, the Jiang family was most familiar with Lu Qingli. Qi City was under Lu Qingli's jurisdiction. Lu Qingli pointed at Chu Xiu behind him and said, "This is the new inspector of the Jianzhou prefecture, Chu Xiu, official Chu." Jiang Shichen and the rest of the Jiang family were about to greet Chu Xiu, but they were stunned when they saw Chu Xiu's strength. Clearly, they didn't expect the new inspector to only be in the physical invulnerability realm. However, Jiang Shichen didn't look too surprised. He only chuckled and said, "So it's official Chu. What a shame. Official Chu was too low-key when he took office. Otherwise, the Jiang family would have sent a congratulatory gift personally." Jiang Shichen was just being polite. No matter how low-key Chu Xiu was, the Jianzhou prefecture was only so big. How could the Jiang family not know about the new inspector? However, they didn't plan to do so. Chu Xiu waved his hand indifferently and said, "You're too polite, Lord Jiang. The Guangzhong torture room guards are just formalities. It doesn't matter if I have it or not." Jiang Shichen chuckled and said, "Official Chu can be indifferent, but the Jiang family can't be indifferent. I'll prepare food and drinks immediately. Official Chu, please take a seat." Seeing that Chu Xiu's attitude was still considered amiable, everyone from the Jiang family heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that the new inspector would be like the previous inspector, Fang Jingyuan, stubborn and unmoved. That would be a headache for them. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "There's no hurry to eat. Actually, I'm here to ask the Jiang family for help." As soon as he said that, the atmosphere immediately became a little tense. The other members of the Jiang family were afraid that Chu Xiu would ask them to help investigate the accidental death of the previous inspector. Jiang Shichen's expression was calm as he said, "Official Chu, if you have something to say, just say it. As long as my Jiang family can help, my Jiang family will definitely not decline." Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Well said. Actually, I'm here to beg for alms from you, Patriarch Jiang. Master Jiang, you should be aware of the situation in the Great Wall. Warriors and caravans from the northern Yan, eastern Qi, and western Chu, as well as some miscellaneous people have gathered here. This has caused the entire Great Wall to be a mess of dragons and snakes, and has attracted many evil cultivators who want to take advantage of the chaos. It's not easy for the Guangzhong torture room to protect the safety of this area. There have been many sacrifices over the years, such as the previous inspector, Fang Jingyuan, and the Jianghu constable Wu Siping, who was under my command not long ago. These people all died in the line of duty to protect the Great Wall. The other members of the Jiang family were slightly nervous when they heard the name Fang Jingyuan, but Jiang Shichen's expression did not change. This was because he knew that the new inspector in front of him did not come for Fang Jingyuan. Otherwise, he would not have added Wu Siping to the list. Everyone in the outside world knew very well what happened to Wu Siping. This arrogant Jianghu constable used to do things very carefully and would never easily take risks. In the end, the new inspector had just arrived and Wu Siping died in the line of duty. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? However, the case of Wu Siping was the same as the case of Fang Jingyuan. There was no evidence and only suspicion was useless. If the people did not report, the officials would not investigate. In any case, as long as no one investigated, it was absolutely safe. Therefore, Jiang Shichen's attention was focused on the word asking for alms that Chu Xiu mentioned. He couldn't help but ask, what does official Chu mean? Chu Xiu said plainly, it's very simple. The Guangzhong torture room protects the safety of this area, but the brothers under me are unwilling to exchange their weapons even if they are broken. I heard that the Jiang family is wealthy and even has the title of Jiang Banqing in Qi City. Therefore, I am thick-skinned and would like to ask for some help from Master Jiang. When the Jiang family heard Chu Xiu say this, they immediately let out a sigh of relief. So it turned out that he was here to ask for money. Since that was the case, it was much easier to deal with. In other places, if the local martial arts forces were asked for money by the people of the imperial court, they would naturally be very disgusted and would resist. However, in Guangzhong, 99% of the aristocratic families established themselves in Guangzhong by trading with the people of the other three countries. The Guangzhong torture room controlled their lifeline, so it was very necessary to have a good relationship with the Guangzhong torture room. Not to mention asking for money, the heartwarming jade Buddha that the Jiang family gave to Wei Jiuduan cost a fifth of the Jiang family's entire fortune. It was a huge loss. Why did the previous patrol Fang Jinyuan die? It wasn't because he was greedy, but because he wasn't greedy. Now that Chu Xiu took the initiative to ask for something from them, it was a good thing. Therefore, Jiang Shichen immediately found a servant and whispered a few words in his ear. He turned his head and said to Chu Xiu, Official Chu, don't worry. The Jiang family has been in Guangzhong for so many years and has been protected by the Guangzhong torture room for so many years. It's time for us to make some contributions to the Guangzhong torture room. After a while, a servant came over with a brocade box. Jiang Shichen placed the brocade box in front of Chu Xiu and said with a smile, Official Chu, please accept it. Chu Xiu opened the brocade box. There was a row of finger-sized purple gold bars and 2 bottles of elixirs. Jiang Shichen stretched out his hand and said, 200 taels of purple gold, 2 bottles of 5th Revolution elixir raising elixir, 20 elixirs. It's just a small token, please accept it. Chu Xiu looked at the things in the brocade box, picked up a purple gold bar and played with it. He looked at Jiang Shichen and said, it's really a small token. Patriarch Jiang, do you think that I, Chu Xiu, am a beggar? Bang! Chu Xiu slapped the brocade box to one side. This sudden outburst shocked everyone. Even Du Guangzhong and the others did not expect that Chu Xiu would fall out with the Jiang family on the spot. The people of the Jiang family showed a trace of anger on their faces. Chu Xiu's action was like a slap to their faces. Jiang Yao, who was hot-tempered, was about to lose his temper but was stopped by Jiang Shichen. The smile on Jiang Shichen's face disappeared. He looked at Chu Xiu and said coldly, Official Chu, what do you mean by this? Chu Xiu said coldly, what do I mean? 200 purple gold bars and 2 bottles of 5th Revolution elixirs are enough to send off a physical invulnerability warrior. But can you send off more than 200 constables and bailiffs of the Jian province Inspector Hall? Jiang Shichen suppressed the anger in his eyes and said, then, Official Chu, how much do you want? Chu Xiu said indifferently, not much. Just 1/10 of the Jiang family's assets. Hearing this, Jiang Shichen was so angry that he laughed and said, Official Chu, what a big appetite you have. Other people are greedy, but you are more ruthless than an evil dragon. You want 1/10 of the Jiang family's assets just by opening your mouth. What right do you have to say that? Chu Xiu said indifferently, your Jiang family is rich and overbearing. You can even give 1/5 of the Jiang family's assets to the disciplinary officer as a birthday gift. Now, am I not worth 1/10 of the Jiang family's assets? Everyone in the Jiang family could see that Chu Xiu was simply making trouble out of nothing. The Jiang family took out 1/5 of the Jiang family's assets to give Wei Zhuduan a birthday gift because they were bold enough to be ruthless enough to get protection. In reality, this was indeed the case. Although the Jiang family was considered a powerful force in the Jianzhou prefecture, it was very inconspicuous in the entire Guanxi area. However, when Jiang Shichen stood his ground and took out 1/5 of the family's assets to buy a heartwarming jade Buddha statue for Wei Zhuduan, the Jiang family immediately stood out and became the most outstanding person at the birthday banquet. Wei Zhuduan was also very satisfied with the Jiang family's gift. When the others saw Wei Zhuduan's attitude, they knew that Wei Zhuduan remembered the Jiang family's favor. Therefore, they would not provoke the Jiang family for no reason. This also allowed the Jiang family to have a smooth life in the past few years. Of course, there were exceptions. For example, Fang Jingyuan did not care about Wei Zhuduan's attitude and insisted on making things difficult for them. It was also impossible for the Jiang family to transfer Fang Jingyuan elsewhere. Although Wei Zhuduan remembered the Jiang family's favor, it did not mean that Wei Zhuduan would do whatever the Jiang family said. This was because it was only a favor and not a transaction. Wei Zhuduan would only give it if he wanted to. If Wei Zhuduan did not want to give it, they could not ask for it. If the Jiang family sent someone to Wei Zhuduan directly and asked him to transfer Fang Jingyuan away, Wei Zhuduan would definitely kick the Jiang family out and think that the Jiang family did not know how to appreciate favors. Since when did a small family dare to interfere with the appointment of a patroller? They were simply asking for death. Therefore, the Jiang family chose to take the risk and get rid of Fang Jingyuan. As long as they did it discreetly and did not leave any obvious evidence, when the matter was reported to Wei Zhuduan would stop people from investigating the Jiang family. Otherwise, if a patroller died, according to tradition, there would be a strict investigation. After this series of events, they had already earned back the money they spent on Wei Zhuduan's birthday gift. This transaction was rather worth it. Looking at Chu Xiu, although he was a patroller, he was just a newcomer. Most importantly, he was only in the physical invulnerability realm. What kind of benefits could a physical invulnerability patroller bring to them? This was something the Jiang family could not think of. Therefore, when Chu Xiu asked for 1/10 of the Jiang family's assets, it could only be described as wishful thinking. At this moment, even the Jiang family elders who had been hesitant were about to turn hostile. However, at this moment, Jiang Shichen suddenly waved his hand and stopped them from saying anything. Looking at Chu Xiu, Jiang Shichen smiled and said, "Official Chu, the thing you want is too precious. I have to report it to the patriarch before I can make a decision. Moreover, 1/10 of the Jiang family's assets are not only in Qi City, but also in the outside world. I need time to gather them. I wonder if official Chu can extend the deadline by 3 days? After 3 days, the Jiang family will definitely give you an answer, official Chu." Chu Xiu looked deeply at Jiang Shichen and said, "All right, I will give you 3 days. I hope that after 3 days, you will make a rational decision." Chapter 160. Outside Qi City, Chu Xiu looked back at the Jiang family and said calmly, "No wonder the Jiang family could rise in Jianzhou. This Jiang Shichen is quite a character." Du Guangzhong nodded and said, "That's right. The Jiang family dared to make a move against Fang Jingyuan in the past. They are indeed audacious." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "That's not what I meant. I'm referring to his attitude today. I've already gone too far just now, and my strength is still there, but this Jiang Shichen was still able to hold himself back from falling out with me. If it were you, would you be able to do the same?" Du Guangzhong thought about it and shook his head. "No. Putting himself in Jiang Shichen's shoes, Chu Xiu's behavior just now was basically looking for trouble. If he were the head of the family, it would be strange if he agreed. Even other small families would not let Chu Xiu bully them like this, let alone someone as powerful as Jiang Shichen, who dared to plot against and kill an inspector. Just because you're an inspector, you can just ask for 1/10 of my family's wealth. Are you the Guangzhong torture room or the 36 northern bandits? Then what should we do in 3 days, sir? Chu Xiu said calmly, nothing. I've said it before. I hope the Jiang family will make a rational choice in 3 days. The choice is not mine, but theirs. After saying that, Chu Xiu turned around and left with his people. Meanwhile, in the Jiang family, Jiang Yao said with dissatisfaction, Master, Chu Xiu is so arrogant. Why are you still tolerating it? 1/10 of the family's wealth? How dare he ask for this? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Jiang Shichen said coldly, of course I know that Chu Xiu is deliberately extorting the Jiang family. However, the reason why the Jiang family has been able to come this far is because of our cautiousness and decisiveness. When it's time to make a move, you have to be decisive, but you can't act rashly. Think about it, the Guangzhong torture room's inspectors are almost all experts in the three-flower realm. But now, a martial artist in the physical invulnerability realm suddenly appeared. How could he have gotten to this position without any background? The previous inspector, Fang Jingyuan, is rigid and inflexible. He has long been disliked by Lord Wei, and he doesn't have any backing. That's why we dare to make a move. But as for Chu Xiu, let's first investigate his background and see if he has the right to take 1/10 of the Jiang family's assets. After that, Jiang Shichen said to Jiang Yao, let's go to the Shang prefecture with me. We need to ask Lord Wei Han about Chu Xiu's background. This time, the Jiang family only took out such a small amount to send off Chu Xiu. It wasn't that they looked down on Chu Xiu, but they had already spent a lot of money on an inspector. However, it wasn't Chu Xiu, but Wei Han, the inspector of the Shang prefecture. After Fang Jingyuan's death, Wei Han was the most active. He wanted to take the opportunity to take over the Jianzhou prefecture. The Jiang family was prepared to invest in advance, so they gave Wei Han a big gift. However, who would have thought that Wei Han didn't take over the Jianzhou prefecture in the end? Instead, the higher-ups sent a new inspector, which made the Jiang family's gift go to waste. Of course, it wasn't exactly a free gift. At least Wei Han remembered the Jiang family's kindness. Even if Wei Han didn't take over the Jianzhou prefecture in the end, he still had a certain relationship with the Jiang family. The area of the Shang prefecture was similar to that of the Jianzhou prefecture, but it was much more prosperous. There were more than 20 small cities under its jurisdiction, and the Shangzhou city in the center was also more prosperous than Jianzhou city. Moreover, Wei Hanshan's way of doing things was different from most of the inspectors. Most of the inspectors of the Guangzhong torture hall, even if they had residences outside, would spend most of their time living in the hall of inspectors. Wei Han, on the other hand, was fond of luxury and enjoyment. He had a special mansion in Shangzhou city, and even his office was in his own residence. He would only go to the hall of inspectors if there was a major event. At this time, Jiang Shichen brought some people to the front of Wei Hanshan's mansion. After reporting, they were brought to the guest hall. After a while, Wei Han yawned and walked out in a loose brocade robe. He said slowly, isn't this the Jiang family's patriarch? Why are you free to come to my place? Previously, Wei Han was quite enthusiastic about the Jiang family. If he could successfully take over the Jianzhou prefecture, he would definitely make friends with a large local clan like the Jiang family. However, now that the new inspector of the Jianzhou prefecture had taken office, he gave up on this idea. His attitude towards the Jiang family was very casual, but after all, he had received benefits from them, so he still had to meet them when it was necessary. Jiang Shichen cupped his hands respectfully and said, this humble one has come to find Lord Wei to inquire about the new inspector of the Jianzhou prefecture, Chu Xiu. That official Chu has really gone too far. Hearing that it was about Chu Xiu, Wei Hanshan's interest was piqued. He asked, "What's wrong? What kind of trouble did your new inspector cause this time?" Jiang Shichen's face had a trace of grief and indignation as he said, "Chu Xiu came to my Jiang family to beg for alms. According to the rules, my Jiang family gave Chu Xiu quite a lot of money. However, who would have thought that Chu Xiu would demand an exorbitant price, asking for 1/10 of our Jiang family's assets?" Hearing this, Wei Hanshan was speechless. He couldn't help but sigh and say, "This Chu Xiu really dares to ask for 1/10 of the family's assets. Is he so poor that he's crazy?" The position of the inspector was the lowest level in the Guangzhong torture room. It was an existence that controlled the power of a region. In a prefecture, there were more than 10 small cities and dozens of big and small powers. If there was a place that needed help from the Guangzhong torture room, it was normal for them to take out some gifts. However, Chu Xiu directly asked for 1/10 of the other party's assets. This was no different from robbery. Even Wei Hanshan didn't dare to do this, so where did this Chu Xiu get his confidence from? Therefore, Wei Hanshan asked in surprise, "This Chu Xiu has gone too far, but you still haven't fallen out with him?" Jiang Shichen said, "I also want to fall out with him, but Chu Xiu looks so aggressive. I don't know who his backer is. If he has some connections in the main hall, wouldn't it be easy for him to take advantage of a small family like my Jiang family? Therefore, I asked Lord Wei for help. I want to find out more about this Chu Xiu." Wei Hanshan looked at Jiang Shichen with a faint smile. "Patriarch Jiang is quite careful." Jiang Shichen smiled apologetically and said, "People in the pugilistic world die if they aren't careful. My Jiang family still has a lot of clansmen behind them, so I can't be careless." Wei Hanshan waved his hand and said, "All right, since Patriarch Jiang has said so, I will help you this time. Chu Xiu's background is really not simple. He also has a backer." Hearing Wei Hanshan's words, Jiang Shichen immediately thought that it was a close shave. The waters of the Guangzhong torture room were deep. The 4 disciplinary officers were only forces on the surface. The truly powerful cultivators were all in the main hall. For example, the leaders of the disciplinary bureau were said to be stronger than the 4 disciplinary officers. But then Wei Hanshan said, "But you don't have to worry. Chu Xiu can't threaten you. This Chu Xiu may be young, but he is quite famous among the younger generation. He is someone who has been on the Longhu list. He used to be a wandering cultivator, but later joined the Blue Dragon Society. He was an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society for a period of time, and it was said that he caused a stir in the east of Yen. Later, for some unknown reason, he suddenly betrayed the Blue Dragon Society and joined the Guangzhong torture room, becoming the Jianzhou Patrol. And his backer, the key to him becoming the patrol, is the Guangzhong hero, Chu Yuanxing. This person was personally recommended by Chu Yuanxing to Lady Guanxiu. It is said that he is a distant relative of Great Hero Chu. Since Great Hero Chu has spoken, Lady Guanxiu naturally has to give him face. Otherwise, do you think that a martial artist in the physical invulnerability realm like him could become the patrol so easily?" Wei Hanshan looked at Jiang Shichen and said calmly, "Although Chu Xiu is an outstanding talent on the Longhu list, his reputation is in the east of Yen. No matter how outstanding he is still only a member of the younger generation. There is no need to worry about him. As for Great Hero Chu's recommendation, you don't have to worry about it. Great Hero Chu has recommended many people over the years. Have you seen him interfere? Moreover, even if Great Hero Chu wants to interfere, he can't. This is an internal matter of the Guangzhong torture room. Great Hero Chu knows his limits." Hearing this, Jiang Shichen immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He cupped his hands at Wei Hanshan and said, "Thank you, Lord Wei, for the information." Wei Hanshan's information was very important to Jiang Shichen. Without absolute confidence, how would he dare to fall out with Chu Xiu? In the past, the Jiang family dared to attack Fang Jingyuan because Fang Jingyuan had no backing. In fact, Wei Jiuduan didn't even like him. Moreover, the Jiang family still owed Wei Jiuduan a favor. Although Chu Xiu was weaker than Fang Jingyuan and had a backer, it was clear that this backer was useless. The great hero of Guanzhong did have a great reputation in Guanzhong, but it was only reputation, not power. Just like what Wei Hanshan said, Chu Yuanqing wouldn't easily interfere with the internal affairs of the Guanzhong torture room. If he had to interfere with every person he recommended, then who would have the final say in the Guanzhong torture room? Jiang Shichen smiled and handed over a brocade box. Inside were 500 taels of purple gold and 2 sixth revolution pills. Although there were only 2 pills, they were more valuable than the 2 bottles of pills that Chu Xiu had. The items in this brocade box were also more than double the amount that he had prepared for Chu Xiu. What do you mean by this, Lord Jiang? Wei Hanshan kept the brocade box without changing his expression and asked. Jiang Shichen smiled and said, "It's just a small gift. I hope Lord Wei won't mind. My Jiang family is preparing to expand our business to the Shangzhou province. I hope Lord Wei will take care of us when the time comes. Also, if Chu Xiu still wants to make things difficult for my Jiang family, I hope Lord Wei will put in a few words of justice for my Jiang family." Although the Jiang family had left some impression in Wei Jiuduan's mind, they still had to make friends with the low-level patrol envoys. Originally, Chu Xiu was a very good choice. However, this Chu Xiu was too greedy. Therefore, they had no choice but to make friends with Wei Hanshan. At most, they would move a part of their business to the Shangzhou province. Chapter 161. 3 days later, Chu Xiu summoned Du Guangzhong and the other 2. He asked them to bring all the Jianghu constables and constables under the inspector hall and gather them outside Qi City. Du Guangzhong and the other 2 were shocked and asked, "Sir, are you going to?" Chu Xiu said lightly, 3 days are up. I've given the Jiang family time. When the time comes, we'll see what the Jiang family will choose. If the Jiang family makes the wrong choice, then I'm sorry. Du Guangzhong and the other 2 felt a chill. Looking at Chu Xiu's behavior, they knew what Chu Xiu meant when he said sorry. However, the 3 of them didn't dare to dissuade Chu Xiu's decision. They could only follow his orders. There was only one advantage to establishing authority through threats. It was that in a short period of time, his subordinates wouldn't dare to say a word of nonsense or disobey him. The bodies of Wu Siping and the others had just been buried. They didn't want to follow in Wu Siping's footsteps. When they arrived at the Jiang family in Qi City again, Chu Xiu led his men into the Jiang family's mansion. However, this time, there wasn't even anyone to greet them. Jiang Shichen and the others didn't even get up when they saw Chu Xiu enter. Chu Xiu didn't mind. He just said indifferently, "Clan leader Jiang, I wonder if you've made up your mind after 3 days?" Jiang Shichen said blandly, "I'm sorry, I can't comply with your Excellency Chu's request. It's true that the Guanzhong Torture Hall protects the safety of the Guanzhong area, but it doesn't mean that the martial arts forces of the Guanzhong area have to bow down to the Guanzhong Torture Hall and let it plunder." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said lightly, "Master Jiang, is this the result after 3 days of consideration? I didn't ask for 1/10 of the family's assets for nothing. The things that you've done in Jianghu Prefecture can't be hidden from others. I'm actually very easy to talk to. As long as I take the things, I'll protect all the businesses of the Jiang family in Jianghu Prefecture. You don't have to be as sneaky as before." Jiang Shichen shouted coldly, "Chu Xiu. Even if you're the patrol of the Guanzhong torture room, you can't slander me. Since when did the Jiang family do anything sneaky? Moreover, the Guanzhong torture room has always relied on evidence to speak. Do you have any evidence for what you're saying?" Jiang Shichen was very confident in facing Chu Xiu. Chu Yuanqing, Chu Xiu's backer, would not interfere with the internal affairs of the Guanzhong torture room, and the Jiangs had also hidden and destroyed all the smuggling evidence. They were more innocent than anyone else. Even if they let Chu Xiu investigate now, Chu Xiu would not be able to find anything. However, because of Chu Yuanqing, the Jiangs could not do anything to Chu Xiu. No one cared about Fang Jingyuan's death, but someone would definitely care about Chu Xiu's death. 2 patrols had died in such a short time, and one of them was introduced by the hero of Guangzhong, Chu Yuansheng. It would be strange if the higher-ups did not send someone to investigate. However, not killing Chu Xiu did not mean that they would let Chu Xiu be arrogant here. After today, Jiangxi Chen was prepared to unite all the martial arts forces in Jianzhou Prefecture to boycott Chu Xiu and ruin his reputation as a patrol. The Guangzhong torture room's review of patrols also depended on their achievements. You, a patrol, have already lost your reputation in your territory. One could imagine how the Guangzhong torture room would think of you. A light punishment would be a reprimand, a heavy punishment. You might even be stripped of your position as a patrol. Looking at Jiangxi Chen's respectful attitude, Chu Xiu shook his head and sighed. Master Jiang, I told you 3 days ago that I hoped you would make a rational choice. Unfortunately, you still made the wrong choice in the end. Don't you want evidence? Fine, I'll give you evidence today. As he spoke, Chu Xiu took out a pile of ores from the space secret box and threw them on the ground. He said coldly, these are precious ores from northern Yen. They are refined into gold and are prohibited from being smuggled to other countries. Qi City's Jiang family has defied the torture room's rules, smuggled prohibited items, and tarnished the reputation of Guangzhong. They deserve death. Everyone from the Jiang family was stunned, including Du Guangzhong. They didn't expect that Chu Xiu was blatantly framing them. The hot-tempered Jiang Yao stood out and pointed at Chu Xiu, shouting, Chu Xiu. Are you treating the Jiang family as idiots or the Guangzhong torture room as idiots? Just you wait, this isn't over yet. The Jiang family is old friends with Lord Wei Zhoduan. After today, the Jiang family will definitely complain about you to Lord Wei Zhoduan. Letting someone like you be the patrol of the Guangzhong torture room is simply reckless. A disdainful sneer was suddenly heard. However, before anyone could react, Chu Xiu's hand was already on his red sleeve blade when the sneer was heard. The blade ray condensed from the blood-refined spirit gang was unsheathed. A green dragon emerged from the sea, and the momentum of the blade soared into the sky. In an instant, the magnificent scarlet blade light filled the entire hall. Its speed was extremely fast, and its power was also extremely strong. No one present, including Du Guangzhong and Chu Xiu's subordinates, expected Chu Xiu to suddenly make a move. However, the blade of Chu Xiu's azure dragon in the sleeve was extremely fast. It was so fast that before Jiang Yao could react, the blade light was already in front of him. Defend. Jiang Yao didn't even have time to draw his sword. He directly struck out with both palms. Green-colored Gang Qi suddenly exploded and condensed into a Gang Qi shield. He wanted to temporarily block Chu Xiu's blade. However, the power of the blood-refined God's shield was beyond his imagination. His Gang Qi shield couldn't even block for a moment in front of Chu Xiu's blade. It was directly smashed by Chu Xiu's blade. With a loud explosion of Gang Qi, Jiang Yao was directly sent flying by Chu Xiu's blade. The huge blade wound on his chest was bleeding, and it was unknown whether he was still alive or not. Chu Xiu held the red sleeve blade and said coldly, I didn't treat anyone as an idiot. However, sometimes, the process isn't important. What matters is the result. Today, I destroyed your Jiang family. If I say that your Jiang family is smuggling contraband, then you are smuggling contraband. If I say that you colluded with evil spirits, then you colluded with evil spirits. It doesn't matter whether you did it or not. What's important is that you did it when I said you did it. Jiangxi Chen's eyes were filled with anger, but more than that, there was regret and fear. Previously, he had always treated Chu Xiu with the same attitude as a normal patrol inspector. It wasn't until now that he realized that Chu Xiu was different from those people. Fang Jingyuan still had to act according to the rules when he found trouble with the Jiang family. He would only take action when he had enough evidence after investigating. In Chu Xiu's opinion, his way of doing things was simply lawless. There were no rules at all. Chu Xiu turned around and said to Du Guangzhong and the others who were still stunned, "What are you still doing there? We can't let any of these sinners of the Jiang family go." Du Guangzhong and the other two gritted their teeth. In any case, the three of them had already boarded Chu Xiu's pirate ship. All of their weaknesses were in Chu Xiu's hands. No matter how excessive Chu Xiu's actions were, they would still follow suit. Therefore, the three of them had no choice but to take out signal arrows and release them out of the meeting hall. The martial artists from the patrol hall who were lying in ambush outside the city immediately entered the city, instantly attracting the attention of most of the martial artists in Qi City. It was important to know that apart from some major missions in the Guangzhong torture room, it was rare for so many martial artists to gather together. At this moment, they thought that some infamous demon had come to Qi City. Jiang Shichen gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, fine, fine. Chu Xiu, it seems like you've been preparing to take action against the Jiang family for a long time. Very well, the Jiang family will accompany you to the end." As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Shichen prepared to gather all the martial artists of the Jiang family to resist Chu Xiu. They could not just sit and wait for death. However, at this moment, an old voice suddenly sounded, "Wait." Outside the meeting hall, an old man in a green robe walked in. His hair and beard were all white, and his face was full of wrinkles. His aura was very vague, but it revealed a smell of decay. "Elder ancestor. Why are you out?" Jiang Shichen and the others hurried to help the elder ancestor up but were blocked by the elder ancestor. "There's no need. I'm not so old that I need someone to help me up." The elder ancestor looked deeply into Chu Xiu's eyes and said, "Official Chu is young and promising, and his methods are shocking. This time, the Jiang family has made an error in judgment. The Jiang family is willing to hand over 1/10 of our family's assets to official Chu. From now on, the Jiang family is willing to follow official Chu's lead." "Elder ancestor." Jiang Shichen hurriedly shouted. The other Jiang family members also looked at the elder ancestor with puzzled and doubtful eyes. They all thought that the elder ancestor had come out because he saw the family was in danger, so he had come out to fight one last time. However, they never expected that the first thing the elder ancestor would do was admit defeat to Chu Xiu. The elder ancestor glanced at Jiang Shichen and sighed, "Fool. In the past, you were the calmest among the younger generation of the Jiang family, so I appointed you to lead the Jiang family. However, I didn't expect you to be so foolish this time. Don't forget where this is. This is Guangzhong. The Guangzhong that belongs to the Guangzhong torture room. If official Chu wants to deal with the Jiang family, even if this reason is a little more ridiculous, the Jiang family will still be at a disadvantage if it is reported to the higher-ups. This is because the Guangzhong torture room will not go wrong." Chu Xiu looked at the Jiang clan's patriarch with a faint smile. Although this old man was old, he wasn't muddle-headed. He could see very clearly. However, Jiang Shichen still argued, "Lord Guanxiu is impartial and impartial. If things get out of hand, Lord Guanxiu will not stand by and do nothing." The elder ancestor shook his head and sighed. "You still don't understand. No matter how impartial and impartial he is, Lord Guan still cares about the benefits of the Guangzhong torture room. If the Jiang family tells the outside world that the inspector of the Guangzhong torture room took things by force and is comparable to bandits, this is the truth. However, it will ultimately damage the image of the entire Guangzhong torture room. This is something that the Guangzhong torture room will never allow. Therefore, if things get out of hand, although official Chu will be punished for breaking the rules, the Jiang family will also be accused of these unreliable crimes and killed. In Guangzhong, the Guangzhong torture room will not make mistakes. The ones who are wrong are us. Once things get out of hand, both sides will suffer." Chapter 162. Compared to Jiang Shichen, the patriarch of the Jiang family had stayed in Guangzhong for more than 100 years. He had witnessed the process of Guangzhong torture room growing from weak to strong and gradually rising. He naturally knew more about Guangzhong torture room than Jiang Shichen. Guangzhong torture room would not allow others to affect their image. Once things got out of hand, even if Chu Xiu threw out this so-called evidence in front of everyone, Guanzhong torture room would make this an ironclad case. So if things got out of hand, it would be a situation where both sides would suffer. The Jiang family had established themselves in Guangzhong for so many years, but this was the first time he had seen such an unruly inspector. However, even if Chu Xiu did not follow the rules, his status in Guangzhong torture room was not something the Jiang family could compare to. Also, he was not like Fang Jingyuan, who had no backing. They could deal with him in secret. Now that Chu Xiu had put on such a show, the patriarch of the Jiang family could not think of any other way other than to admit defeat and seek revenge in the future. Chu Xiu looked at the Jiang clan's patriarch and sighed. He shook his head and said, "Your Jiang clan does have someone who understands. Unfortunately, I gave your Jiang clan a chance, but you didn't cherish it." The patriarch of the Jiang family's expression changed slightly. "Official Chu, what do you mean? Could it be that you want both sides to suffer heavy losses? You have gone too far. If this goes to the higher-ups, you will lose your position as inspector. The Jiang family has no deep grudge with you. Is this worth it?" Chu Xiu said coolly, "Why do we have to go to the higher-ups? If we destroy the entire Jiang family, would anyone still go and make a fuss? I have said that I gave you a chance, but you did not cherish it. Old Master Jiang, you have been in the Jianghu for a long time. You should know that when it comes to doing something, either you do it or you do it to the extreme. Today, your Jiang family was forced to lower their heads and hand over 1/10 of their assets. You must be very dissatisfied, right? Who knows how you will plot against me in the future? In order to avoid future troubles, I ask that all of you die." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu shouted, "Kill!" As soon as the word "kill" was uttered, Du Guangzhong and the others immediately charged forward. While they were talking, the other Jianghu constables from the patrol hall had also arrived at the Jiang clan and charged forward. The great ancestor of the Jiang family widened his eyes when he saw this. He pointed at Chu Xiu and shouted, "Madman! Are you so confident that you can destroy the Jiang family? Don't you know the relationship between my Jiang family and Lord Wei Jiuduan? Have you considered the consequences of destroying my Jiang family?" Chu Xiu held the red sleeve knife in his hand as he walked step by step towards the Jiang clan patriarch. He said indifferently, "After talking for so long, your Jiang clan's confidence still comes from Lord Wei Jiuduan. Unfortunately, Lord Wei is not here now. Strength that is not your own will never be your own. Your Jiang clan's confidence is very weak." As soon as he finished speaking, the red sleeve knife in Chu Xiu's hand suddenly slashed forward. The crimson saber was more than 10 feet long, and a ferocious killing intent filled the air. The atmosphere in the entire meeting hall suddenly turned cold. The great ancestor of the Jiang clan's eyes suddenly shone with a sharp light. He shouted, "When the family is in danger, no one should hold back. Whether the Jiang clan can survive this crisis depends on today." The great ancestor of the Jiang clan was indeed a little timid before. He still chose to admit defeat when Chu Xiu had forced him to such an extent. But in fact, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan was just thinking of the big picture. He didn't want to fight with Chu Xiu until both sides suffered losses. Now that Chu Xiu had decided to go all out, the Jiang clan also had the courage to fight to the death. Although the great ancestor of the Jiang clan was old and his qi and blood were declining, he was not someone who could be killed by a junior in the physical invulnerability realm. Facing Chu Xiu's saber, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan formed a fist print with one hand and slammed it down. His seemingly declining body actually bloomed with a dazzling sharpness. White gang qi suddenly erupted, and the fist print fell like thousands of flowers blooming, one layer on top of the other. Bursts of gang qi explosions rang out, directly blasting Chu Xiu away. The realm of 3 flowers at one's prominence was to condense one's essence, qi, and spirit to their peak state, converging them into one. It was like stepping into another world. As long as one could step into the realm of 3 flowers at one's prominence at a young age, they could even slow down their own aging. Among the 5 levels of qi-controlling realm, the inner and physical invulnerability realms were different worlds. The 3 flowers and 5 qis were another world, and the final realm of oneness of heaven and man was the peak of qi-controlling realm. In the past, Chu Xiu could easily kill a physical invulnerability realm with internal invulnerability. But now, it was extremely difficult for him to kill an expert who had condensed the 3 flowers at the crown as a physical invulnerability realm, even if the person in front of him was actually old. The great ancestor of the Jiang clan said coldly, "I may be old, but I can still swing my fists." "Is that so? I wonder how many more fists you can swing now, old Master Jiang." A glimmer of sharpness appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He sheathed his saber and punched. His hand formed a seal, and the great Vajra will print suddenly fell. Golden Gang Qi bloomed, suppressing evil and slaying demons. Seeing that Chu Xiu had actually used a Buddhist technique, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan was also a little incredulous. This Chu Xiu was vicious and ruthless, and he did not leave any room for maneuvers. How could such a person use a Buddhist technique? What a joke! However, at this moment, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan could not be bothered to think about this. His old body once again exploded with extremely powerful Gang Qi waves. As his punches landed, Gang Qi bloomed like 100 flowers, stacking layer upon layer and exploding with astonishing might. The ingenuity of this fist technique was that it could explode one level of true Qi twice, or even more, to the point of exploding. Spirit and Qi as one, Gang Qi fluttered and agitated. At this moment, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan seemed to have recovered to his peak, and his attacks were extremely powerful. Even though Chu Xiu's great Vajra will print was extremely powerful, he could only be sent flying with a single punch, and even his internal organs were slightly shaken. However, right now, Chu Xiu seemed as if he did not feel it at all. He charged forward again and again in a frenzy, displaying the close combat killing technique of the 9 words formula to the extreme, and occasionally launching sneak attacks with the great violet sun palm. However, this evil palm technique was not very useful against a cultivator at the level of the Jiang clan's great ancestor. The great ancestor's inner force cultivation far surpassed Chu Xiu's. The moment the violet sun demonic flames entered his body, he forced them out, and in the end, he punched back at Chu Xiu. In the beginning, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan did not feel anything. Even the other cultivators from the Jiang clan saw that their great ancestor was still so valiant and had a strong aura. However, towards the end, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan felt that something was not right. The saying, "Fist is afraid of the young and strong," was somewhat problematic in the pugilistic world. However, if one was in the prime of his life while the other was in a declining state of vital energy and blood, then under the situation where both parties were about the same level, the former would most likely win. After all, as cultivators, the decline of their physical body would inevitably affect their battle prowess. Right now, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan was old enough. He was so old that he had to go into seclusion and reduce his activities to extend his lifespan. Although he was suppressing Chu Xiu was exchanging his life for his injuries. Every time the great ancestor of the Jiang clan punched out, he was actually punching out his few remaining lives. The great ancestor of the Jiang clan took a deep breath, and a hint of determination appeared in his eyes. This was a calamity for the Jiang clan, and it was also karma. It was time to pay it back. Back then, when Jiang Shichen wanted to kill Fang Jingyuan, he had reported to him, and the great ancestor of the Jiang clan had agreed. That was because Fang Jingyuan's character was a little too inflexible. He was stubborn to the extreme, and he was unmoved by force or persuasion. Furthermore, Fang Jingyuan had already set his sights on the Jiang clan. Once he found something that could be used against them and caused a huge commotion, it would be extremely difficult for even Wei Jiuduan to protect the Jiang clan. That was why the Jiang clan took the risk and killed Fang Jingyuan. This way, no one would target the Jiang clan. Who would have thought that after the death of Fang Jingyuan, who was stubbornly adhering to the rules, a daring lunatic would appear? Although the former was troublesome, he would not take the Jiang clan's life. On the other hand, the latter would really dare to destroy the Jiang clan. Perhaps this was karma, but it was too late for regrets now. All he could do was to use all his strength to kill Chu Xiu. Only then could he win the last chance of survival for the Jiang clan. At this moment, white gang qi surged around the great ancestor of the Jiang clan. The powerful force of his punch gathered at one point. It was unusually dazzling and resplendent. However, in comparison, the great ancestor of the Jiang clan seemed to have aged more than 10 years in an instant. He had an aura of decay. The aging and decaying body formed a very sharp contrast with the magnificent and resplendent force of the punch. However, when the punch landed, the powerful force directly enveloped the entire meeting hall. It was as if a vortex had formed, pulling everyone's attention into it. Facing the great ancestor of the Jiang clan's punch, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Cultivators like the great ancestor of the Jiang clan, who had reached the end of their lifespan and could only drag out an ignoble existence, looked very weak. However, in reality, when it came time to fight with their lives on the line, they were more terrifying than anyone else. This was because existences like the great ancestor of the Jiang clan already knew that their lifespan was coming to an end and that they would definitely die. Therefore, in this final battle, they were able to disregard life and death and sublimate themselves to the extreme, erupting with their strongest power. The brilliant and magnificent punch was burning the life of the great ancestor of the Jiang clan. It was extremely powerful and blocked all the space around Chu Xiu's body to dodge, forcing him to take it head-on. Clenching the red sleeve blade in his hand, Chu Xiu's aura became extremely terrifying at this moment. It was as if he was a devil coming out of hell. Evil black gas with endless hatred lingered on Chu Xiu's blade. In Chu Xiu's eyes. When the blade slashed out, it was as if the gates of hell had opened. The cold intent made the temperature of the entire meeting hall drop instantly, as if it was a harsh winter. 3 blades of Avicii. However, this time, Chu Xiu did not use the first blade. Instead, he directly used the terrifying power of the second blade. The pitch-black blade light seemed to be on the verge of shattering under the dazzling fist force, but in the end, the terrifying demonic blade suddenly erupted with a shocking power of blood. With a loud bang, the fist force dissipated. The great ancestor of the Jiang clan looked at Chu Xiu as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, his body swayed and he fell to the ground with a loud bang. Great ancestor. Behind him, Jiang Shichen and the others cried out at the same time, their eyes filled with grief. Chapter 163. Even Chu Xiu couldn't fully control the power of the 3 blades of Avicii. In the past, when Chu Xiu used the second blade, he almost couldn't suppress the powerful backfire. But now, after using the second blade, Chu Xiu immediately formed the Zhe character formula and used the inner lion seal. The powerful force of the inner lion seal suppressed his own backfire easily. As the old ancestor of the Jiang family was killed, the other members of the Jiang family were in despair. Just as Chu Xiu said, this time, Chu Xiu wouldn't give them a chance to make a scene. The entire Jiang family was dead. Who would make a scene? Run! Run! Jiang Shichen shouted at the juniors of the Jiang family. Now, he only hoped that these talented juniors of the Jiang family could escape. In this way, the Jiang family would still have a glimmer of hope. However, at this time, Chu Xiu had used the inner lion seal to completely suppress the backfire of the 3 blades of Avicii. He walked over with the blade and said faintly, "Now you want to escape. It's too late." If the old ancestor of the Jiang family and Jiang Shichen had joined hands to stop Chu Xiu and the others, it was still possible for the rest of the Jiang family to escape. But now that the old ancestor of the Jiang family was dead, it was impossible for Jiang Shichen to stop Chu Xiu alone. The red sleeve blade slashed over. In an instant, the blade radiance was like a drizzle. The powerful blood-refined divine gang was mixed in the blade radiance and burst out. The powerful force made people tremble. It directly forced Jiang Shichen to the extreme. "I'll fight with you!" Jiang Shichen shouted angrily. At this time, the white gang qi around his body turned a bit red. The blood and qi in his body surged and began to burn crazily. When he punched, the blood-colored fist radiance made him look extremely terrifying. To think that you still have a sliver of leeway even after going all out. Compared to your old ancestor, you are far inferior. The first blade of the Avicii Dao's 3 blades slashed down with a loud rumble. The Avicii Dao's gate of death opened wide, and a pitch-black blade light streaked across the sky. Jiang Xichen's body fell to the ground with a loud bang. His body was directly cut into 2, but strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out. Looking at Jiang Xichen's corpse, Chu Xiu shook his head. If Jiang Xichen really wanted to put his life on the line, Chu Xiu might be able to deter him. But just now, this fellow had still held back a little bit of strength, or perhaps he was imagining that he would be able to escape after severely injuring Chu Xiu. This was really courting death. He didn't even dare to go all out. If such a person didn't die, who would? With the death of the old ancestor of the Jiang family and Jiang Xichen, the other martial artists of the Jiang family were really not qualified to compete with the martial artists of the Guanzhong torture room. The martial artists who came from the Guanzhong torture room, whether they were trained by themselves or joined halfway like Chu Xiu, were at least a level higher than the martial artists of the Jianghu at the same level. For example, although there were a few physical invulnerability experts among the elders of the Jiang family, they were completely no match for Du Guangzhong and the others. After a quarter of an hour, Du Guangzhong walked over and cupped his hands at Chu Xiu. With some discomfort, he said, "Official Chu, the people of the Jiang family have all been killed." What happened today could be said to be the biggest impact on Du Guangzhong. In the past, Du Guangzhong was a standard old-school constable of the Jianghu. Although he didn't have a chivalrous heart, he strictly followed the rules of the Guanzhong torture room. As a result, in recent years, he could be said to have completely degenerated. Not only did he embezzle taxes, but now he even massacred the martial arts forces in Guanzhong without sufficient evidence. He killed them all. It was the first time he had done such a thing, so he was not used to it. Go and open the Jiang family's treasury and other places. Move all the resources into the meeting hall, ordered Chu Xiu. After a while, Du Guangzhong and the other 2 immediately moved all the things into the meeting hall. There were martial arts manuals, cultivation resources, and some sabers, swords, weapons, purple gold, and other precious treasures. In total, there were more than a dozen big boxes. After calling all the warriors of the Guanzhong torture room who participated in the massacre, Chu Xiu looked at everyone present and said in a deep voice, "The Guanzhong torture room has its own rules, but I, Chu Xiu, also have my own rules, Chu Xiu. Those who are obedient will be rewarded, and those who put in the most effort will also be rewarded." Chu Xiu pointed at the things plundered from the Jiang family and said in a deep voice, 20% of these things are yours, 30% is mine, and 50% is to be handed over to the torture chamber. How much you can take doesn't depend on me, but on whether you have the ability to do it. As soon as these words were said, the constables of the patrol hall all showed surprise and excitement in their eyes. It wasn't that they hadn't seen good things before, but the Guanzhong torture room would never distribute things so simply and crudely like Chu Xiu. For example, the taxes of the Guanzhong torture room were collected from the bottom, and then distributed to the lower levels according to the number of people. The amount given depended entirely on the internal decision of the torture chamber. But now, Chu Xiu placed all the benefits in front of them. How much they could take didn't depend on others, but only on their own ability. In this way, the things they could get were simply unimaginable for ordinary missions. Looking at the people present, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a look of contemplation. The Guanzhong torture room was very powerful. After Chu Kuanga laid the foundation for the Guanzhong torture room, Guan Siyu was able to lead the Guanzhong torture room to rise because of the word rules. Although the rules of the Guanzhong torture room were really strict in the beginning, the lower levels of the Guanzhong torture room slacked off as time went on. Even if Guan Siyu was really impartial, he couldn't control people's hearts. The resources that the Jianghu constables at the bottom could obtain were too little. In the beginning, they could still maintain some spirit, but in the end, the purpose of those Jianghu constables joining the Guanzhong torture hall had changed from being outstanding to idling around. When most of the constables felt that they had no hope of being promoted, they would usually slack off and start idling around. Anyway, as long as they didn't make any mistakes, they would always be members of the Guangzhong torture room, and they could also receive a decent salary on time. Although there wouldn't be any major problems in this way, it would make everything gloomy. Looking at the people present, Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "The land of Guangzhong has its current peace and order because of the Guangzhong torture room. All the credit for this is the foundation that the predecessors of the Guangzhong torture room laid down. However, some of the martial arts forces in the land of Guangzhong think that they are the masters of this place. They disregard the law and discipline and don't take the Guangzhong torture room seriously. I don't care how the previous patrol inspector did things, and I don't care how the disciplinary officer does things. But in my, Chu Xiu's, territory, no matter if it's a sect or an aristocratic family, all of you must learn one word: reverence. Don't be afraid of making a big deal out of this. Even if you do, I will still support you." The constables present all had a strange look in their eyes. They said in a low voice, "Yes, sir." For the constables in the Jian province inspector hall, they had been sulking for a long time. Before Fang Jingyuan, all the inspectors in the Jian province inspector hall were mediocre people. All they wanted was stability. As long as they didn't cause any big trouble, they would basically give in to the sects and aristocratic families under them. Later on, when Fang Jingyuan became the inspector, although he wouldn't give in to the sects and aristocratic families, he was very pedantic. He would only make a move after there was conclusive evidence. However, the crux of the problem was that if the sects and aristocratic families in the Jian province did something that violated the laws of the Guangzhong torture room, could they leave any obvious loopholes? Moreover, Fang Jingyuan was not only pedantic to outsiders, he was also very strict with his own people. This caused his subordinates to have a lot less gray income, causing complaints. His reputation was even worse than the previous few mediocre inspectors. But now, everything that Chu Xiu displayed made them see something different. That was domineering. The Guangzhong torture room was originally revered in the land of Guangzhong. In the end, they lived such a sullen life. Just as Chu Xiu said, they should let the sects and aristocratic families know what it meant to be in awe and who should be the master of the land of Guangzhong. It didn't matter if you were guilty or not, and it didn't matter if they had evidence on their side. In any case, as long as they said you were guilty, you were guilty. It was that simple. Of course, what made these constables approve of Chu Xiu the most was Chu Xiu's generosity. He gave them 20% of the Jiang family's resources. This was already a very generous move. Looking at Chu Xiu's current attitude, it was likely that he would be like this in the future. Seeing the momentum of these people, Chu Xiu nodded in satisfaction. When Chu Xiu first saw these constables under Jianghu prefecture, he felt that these people were shrouded in a sense of lethargy. Their morale was extremely low. This was not a good sign. Now that there was a great reward, these people had some motivation. Of course, in Chu Xiu's opinion, their strength was still somewhat low. Maybe it was because Chu Xiu had stayed with the assassins in the Heavenly Sin branch for a long time and liked to use them as a benchmark. That was why he felt that the constables in Jianghu Prefecture Inspector Hall were weak. In fact, the strength of these people was considered relatively outstanding among the warriors of the same rank, and the assassins in the Heavenly Sin branch were the elites among the warriors of the same rank. Otherwise, if the Heavenly Sin branch leader had relaxed the selection of assassins, the Heavenly Sin branch wouldn't only have a pitiful 100 people. Du Guangzhong and the other two looked at each other. It was only now that they seemed to understand some of official Chu's style of doing things. However, this feeling was not bad. At the very least, it was much better than Fang Jingyuan and the previous few inspectors. Take some people and bring all the items back to the inspector hall. Also, let your subordinates spread the Jiang family's crime to all the cities in Jianghu Prefecture. Thoroughly prove their crimes, Chu Xiu ordered. Yes, my lord. Du Guangzhong and the other two cupped their hands and immediately carried out the order. A day later, in the Shang Prefecture that was close to Jianghu Prefecture, Wei Hanshan received the news from his subordinates. His expression suddenly changed, and he said coldly, "This Chu Xiu is simply too audacious." Chapter 164. Wei Hanshan did not have a close relationship with the Jiang family. After knowing that the Jiang family was destroyed by Chu Xiu, Wei Hanshan was so angry because Chu Xiu had affected his interests. The Jiang family had promised to transfer a part of their business to the Shangzhou prefecture, so that he could also get a part of the filial piety. But now that the Jiang family was destroyed by Chu Xiu, who could he ask for his part of the filial piety? Moreover, Chu Xiu's way of doing things was simply breaking the rules. It was normal for some sects or aristocratic families in Guangzhong to secretly do some illegal but highly profitable business such as smuggling. As long as they did not cause too much trouble, basically no one would care. But at the same time, these sects and aristocratic families would also give some filial piety to their superiors to let them go or pretend that they did not see what they had done. These were some of the unspoken rules that the Guangzhong torture room had in secret. But now, Chu Xiu's domineering behavior had broken these unspoken rules. Although Chu Xiu was doing this in his own territory, he was representing the Guangzhong torture room. His actions did not only implicate him. What nonsense! Wei Hanshan snorted coldly. He immediately called for people to change into the clothes of the Guangzhong torture room and go to the Jianghu prefecture. These secret unspoken rules were not set by the Guangzhong torture room, but they were the benefits that the inspectors obtained after compromising with the local martial arts forces. It was unknown whether the entire Guangzhong torture room was like this, but it was what they did in Guangxi. Now that Chu Xiu, a newcomer who did not know anything, broke these unspoken rules, it was hard to guarantee that Wei Hanshan and the other inspectors would not be treated as enemies by the sects in the martial arts world. When that happened, it would be difficult to collect the money. In the Jianghu prefecture, Chu Xiu was personally leading people to divide the treasures and resources obtained from the Jiang family. Although these things were in triplicate, they could not be distributed at will. Naturally, they had to prioritize their own interests first. Therefore, Chu Xiu would make a selection in advance and let others categorize them according to his standards. Then, he would choose what he needed first. At this moment, Du Guangzhong suddenly walked in and said, "My lord, the Shang Prefecture's patrol inspector Wei Hanshan is here." Chu Xiu frowned. What is he doing here? Chu Xiu hadn't forgotten Wei Hanshan's attitude towards him when they were at the Guangxi Torture Hall's branch. It wasn't friendly at all. Du Guangzhong smiled bitterly and said, "Sir Wei's mood seems to be somewhat bad, so this subordinate did not dare to ask too much." "Then let's go meet him," Chu Xiu said lightly. With Wei Hanshan's sudden visit, Chu Xiu could roughly guess the other party's intentions. Apart from him destroying the Jiang clan, what else could attract the other party's attention? When Chu Xiu arrived at the meeting hall, Wei Hanshan was already sitting there waiting with a gloomy expression. When he saw Chu Xiu walk in, Wei Hanshan immediately snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, how dare you? You've only taken over as patrol inspector for a few days, yet you've already caused such a huge commotion. You actually dared to destroy the Jiang clan, a family with such a long history, without any evidence. Do you still have any respect for the Guangzhong torture room's rules?" Chu Xiu sat down calmly and took a sip of tea. Then, he raised two fingers and said lightly, "First, I have evidence to destroy the Jiang clan. I, Chu Xiu, have always done things with reason and evidence. Why would I take action without evidence? Second." Chu Xiu raised his head and revealed a trace of coldness in his eyes. He said, "Who do you think you are? Do you have the right to control whether I'm bold or not? Don't forget that you and I are both inspectors. You can't control me if you want to meddle in other people's business." When he heard Chu Xiu's words, Wei Hanshan's expression immediately became extremely gloomy. Indeed, he and Chu Xiu were both inspectors. However, Chu Xiu was only a physical invulnerability expert, while he was already an expert who had condensed the 3 flowers above the crown. Wei Hanshan laughed coldly at the other party's provocation and said, "Who do I think I am? Fine, fine, fine. Today, I'll show you who I really am. Don't think that just because you joined the Guanzhong torture room and became an inspector, you can be on equal footing with us inspectors of Guanxi. Whether it's inside the Guanzhong torture room or outside the Guanzhong torture room, it all depends on strength. As soon as he finished speaking, a long, narrow, and slender silver-white long saber appeared in Wei Hanshan's hand. A dense chill lingered on the edge of the saber. When the saber slashed out, the icy cold Gang Qi was like a silver waterfall, slashing toward Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu moved later but arrived first. The blood-refined divine Gang on the red sleeve saber sword, and the scarlet Gang Qi collided with Wei Hanshan's saber. Suddenly, there was an explosion of Gang Qi. Both Wei Hanshan's Gang Qi and the saber's Gang Qi disappeared in midair. It was actually a draw. Wei Hanshan's eyes suddenly revealed a touch of surprise. He didn't use his full strength in that attack just now. After all, they were both inspectors. He could teach Chu Xiu a lesson, but he couldn't kill Chu Xiu in public. Even so, he was still a realm stronger than Chu Xiu. Unexpectedly, Chu Xiu's Gang Qi was really terrifying. That Gang Qi, which contained an astonishing amount of blood Qi and evil Qi, could easily block his Gang Qi. Wei Hanshan snorted coldly and changed the momentum of his saber. Endless cold Qi condensed on the edge of his saber, and the Gang Qi stretched for dozens of feet. In terms of accumulation, he was, after all, an expert who had condensed the 3 flowers above the head. In terms of strength, his strength far exceeded Chu Xiu's. The momentum of the saber whistled down like a gale. Wherever it passed, the cold Qi actually condensed a layer of ice on the ground. The red sleeve saber in Chu Xiu's hand had already condensed a trace of black mist around it. The power of the 3 blades of Avicii was displayed and slashed down with a loud bang. The evil chill was even stronger than Wei Hanshan's ice Gang Qi. Infernal hell bloomed, and the power of the 3 blades of Avicii shocked even Wei Hanshan. He had been an inspector in the Guanzhong torture room for several years. He had come into contact with all kinds of demonic murderers, so he had a relatively good understanding of demonic cultivation methods. However, no matter which demonic murderer's cultivation method, it was not as evil and terrifying as Chu Xiu's saber. With a loud explosion of Gang Qi, the 3 blades of Avicii directly defeated Wei Hanshan's saber. The power even made Wei Hanshan's heart palpitate. At this time, Chu Xiu still did not stop. Instead, the black Qi on his saber became thicker. He was actually preparing to break out the second blade of the 3 blades of Avicii. Just as Wei Hanshan had said before, whether it was inside the Guanzhong torture room or outside the Guanzhong torture room, as a warrior, everyone had to look at their strength. Although Chu Xiu and Wei Hanshan were both Guanxi inspectors, it was obvious that Wei Hanshan and the others had never treated Chu Xiu as an existence on the same level as them. If it were someone else, would Wei Hanshan dare to come and reprimand Chu Xiu directly? That would be a provocation. He would only send someone to find out the other party's attitude and background, and would not act as overbearing as he was now. Therefore, this time, Chu Xiu did not have the slightest intention of holding back. Didn't you want to look at my strength? Fine, today I will show you my strength. Feeling the power contained in Chu Xiu's saber, Wei Hanshan's eyes revealed a hint of ruthlessness. This time, he had only planned to teach Chu Xiu a lesson, but he did not expect his opponent to be so domineering. Moreover, his strength was somewhat beyond his imagination. He was only in the physical invulnerability stage, and yet he was able to fight with him to this extent. No wonder he had entered the Longhu list. However, a physical invulnerability stage was still a physical invulnerability stage, and the gap of a large realm was not that easy to make up for. Wei Hanshan grasped the long saber in his hand, and all the Gang Qi in his body condensed on the long saber. The cold Gang Qi actually underwent a very strange change, condensing into ice crystals that circled around his long saber like snowflakes. In the past, Wei Hanshan had once traveled to the far north snow mountain to observe the scene of an avalanche and comprehend the true meaning of martial arts. He had also once sparred with the warriors of the far north Snow Mountain, and finally created this move, Parting Ice Slash, as his trump card. Unless he was facing an extremely difficult opponent, Wei Hanshan would not use this move easily. The impact of condensing the ice true chi was like an avalanche. It was indeed powerful, but the backlash was also great, so he would not use it often. But now that he was facing Chu Xiu, he was already forced to this extent by a physical invulnerability stage martial artist. If he did not use his trump card, he might really be at a disadvantage in the hands of Chu Xiu. Just as the two were about to explode with their strongest attacks, a figure rushed in front of them. His gang chi dissipated like a cool breeze, diluting the heavy atmosphere between the two. The person who suddenly appeared was the Lin State Prefecture's inspector, Jiang Taoran, who was also one of the inspectors who worked closely with Chu Xiu. At this moment, Jiang Taoran cupped his hands in greeting, and said with a smile, "Both of you, we are all colleagues, so why must we fight? The Guangzhong torture room is internal strife, and the spectators are outsiders, so please calm down first." Seeing Jiang Taoran's appearance, Chu Xiu and Wei Hanshan knew that they would not be able to fight this time, so they snorted coldly and put away their weapons. But when Chu Xiu looked at Jiang Taoran's smiling face, his eyes revealed a hint of deep meaning. This person was also not easy to deal with. Lin State City, the center of the Lin State Prefecture, was not far from Jianghu City, so he should have arrived long ago. But in the end, he did not appear earlier or later, but waited until the crucial moment of his battle with Wei Hanshan to act as a peacemaker. Clearly, he had his own intentions. If Chu Xiu did not show his strength, then Jiang Taoran would probably have to wait until he was seriously injured before he stepped in to be the peacemaker. He would not let the matter get out of hand, and at the same time, he would gain his gratitude. Wei Hanshan looked at Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you have run amok and broken the rules of the Guangzhong torture room. This matter is not over. I will report this matter to Lord Wei and let him handle it. If we continue to let someone like you be the inspector, the reputation of the Guanxi torture room branch will be ruined by you." After saying that, Wei Hanshan snorted coldly and turned to leave. Chapter 165. After Wei Hanshan left, Jiang Taoran shook his head at Chu Xiu with a bitter smile. "Brother Chu, it seems like you've caused quite a bit of trouble this time. Generally speaking, disputes between inspectors would not be reported to Lord Wei, but this time, it seems like you've angered Wei Hanshan to the point that he actually reported this matter to Lord Wei." What Chu Xiu did not affect him at all. Every inspector had their own ways of making money. Jiang Taoran was a slicker, and the way he did things was more secretive. On the surface, he naturally received bribes from the martial arts forces under him, but in reality, he was secretly supporting a small aristocratic family that specialized in smuggling. All the money they obtained belonged to him, so what the other sects and aristocratic families thought had little to do with him. He only appeared here to fish in troubled waters. If Wei Hanshan could get rid of Chu Xiu, he would also be interested in the Jian province prefecture. On the other hand, if Chu Xiu made Wei Hanshan lose face, he would also be in a good mood. This was because his relationship with Wei Hanshan was not considered good. A part of the Shang province prefecture was bordered by his Lin province prefecture, and there were many conflicts between the two sides. Looking at Jiang Taoran, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I will explain to Lord Wei." So what if Wei Hanshan is dissatisfied? We are both inspectors, can he eat me? Jiang Taoran's face revealed a trace of an inexplicable smile. All right then, I will wait to see official Chu's response. After saying this, Jiang Taoran also left. Outside the meeting hall, Du Guangzhong and the others walked out with a worried expression. "Lord, if Wei Hanshan reports this matter to Lord Wei Zhoduan, it will be very troublesome." The reason why a patrol was called a patrol was that this position had the authority to patrol an area. However, they were only an inspector, not a manager. If Chu Xiu did such a big thing behind Wei Zhoduan's back, it was hard to guarantee that Wei Zhoduan would not be angry. Chu Xiu asked, "Do you still remember that I asked you to split half of the loot from destroying the Jiang clan?" Du Guangzhong was stunned and said, "Yes, but shouldn't those be handed over to the Guangzhong torture room?" Chu Xiu's face revealed a hint of confusion. That was prepared to be handed over to Lord Wei. In Guanxi, Lord Wei represents the Guangzhong torture room. Du Guangzhong nodded thoughtfully. They seemed to have guessed something. Wei Hanshan's words were not meant to scare Chu Xiu. He had lost face in front of Chu Xiu. Even with his strength, he was unable to suppress Chu Xiu. Of course, he would report this matter to Wei Jiuduan. Although this kind of behavior felt like a complaint, it was also the most effective. Although it could be said that Chu Xiu had been recommended to the Guangzhong torture room by Chu Yuanqing, if he could not maintain his position as inspector, then he could not blame Wei Jiuduan for not giving Chu Yuanqing any face. 3 days later, the Guanxi torture chamber sent someone to summon Chu Xiu to discuss matters at the branch. In reality, it was to ask him about the Jiang clan's extermination. When Chu Xiu arrived at the Guanxi torture chamber's meeting hall, other than Wei Jiuduan, the other 5 inspectors were also present. Other than Wei Hanshan, who was looking at Chu Xiu maliciously, the others were also sizing up Chu Xiu with a strange gaze. Exterminating a large clan right after taking office was something that even they, who had been patrol envoys for over a decade, did not dare to do. Wasn't Chu Xiu's actions a little too audacious? Wei Jiuduan sat on the main seat. Although he was old, his gaze was as sharp as an eagle's. Even he had not expected that Chu Xiu, who had been recommended to the Guangzhong torture room by Chu Yuanqing, would be so daring. He had exterminated a powerful clan right after taking over the position of inspector. In reality, the Guangzhong torture room had destroyed many clans, especially after Guan Siyu had taken over the Guangzhong torture room. In the past, when Chu Kuanga had taken over the Guangzhong torture room, the Guangzhong torture room had established itself in Guangzhong because of Chu Kuanga's personal charisma. In Guangzhong, whether it was the torture chamber or the clans and sects, they were all obedient to Chu Kuanga. Even if some people had small schemes, they did not dare to show it. When Guan Siyu had taken over the Guangzhong torture room, he had relied on harsh punishments. Anyone who violated the rules of the Guangzhong torture room, even if they were his personal disciples, would not be spared. Therefore, at that time, if there was anyone in Guangzhong who disobeyed the rules of the torture chamber, their clan would be exterminated without any mercy. Of course, that was only 30 years ago, when Guan Siyu had just taken over the Guangzhong torture room. Now that the Guangzhong torture room had stabilized, and the various inspectors and torturers had great power, they had a tacit understanding with the local martial arts factions. This kind of thing had not happened for a while. What truly infuriated Wei Jiuduan that Chu Xiu had done such a thing was that the Jiang family had some connection to him. During his birthday, the Jiang clan had gifted him a precious heart-warming jade Buddha statue. Wei Jiuduan still remembered this. In the end, only a short time had passed, and the Jiang family had been destroyed by his own subordinates. This was a slap to his face. How would the people of Guanxi look at him now? Looking straight at Chu Xiu, Wei Jiuduan said coldly, "Chu Xiu, I need an explanation for this. The Guangzhong torture room is not a place where you can do whatever you want." In an instant, a solemn pressure attacked Chu Xiu, almost making it difficult for him to breathe. In fact, in terms of strength, the old Wei Jiuduan was naturally no match for the Heavenly Sin Branch leader, but in terms of power, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader was far inferior to Wei Jiuduan. The Heavenly Sin Branch leader had been a lone assassin in the Blue Dragon Society headquarters. Later on, he had been in charge of the Heavenly Sin Branch leader, but he had only had 100 or so subordinates, not even as many as Chu Xiu's subordinates. Meanwhile, Wei Jiuduan had been in charge of Guanxi for decades, and he was even more experienced than Hall Master Guan Siyu. There were thousands of constables and bailiffs under him, and they were all elites of the martial arts world. With this kind of power, Wei Jiuduan, who had been in a high position for many years, naturally had an aura that was even stronger than the Heavenly Sin Branch leaders. Under Wei Jiuduan's pressure, Chu Xiu stood up and cupped his hands. "Milord, the Jiang family smuggled contraband and disregarded the laws of the Guangzhong torture room. Their crimes are punishable by death. I have done everything according to the rules. Before Wei Zheduan could speak, Wei Hanshan sneered. Rules? Are your so-called evidence the rules? Chu Xiu, do you take us for idiots? Chu Xiu said indifferently, let's not talk about whether or not I take you for an idiot. Milord Wei is asking questions here, so what right do you have to speak? Or do you think that your status is high enough to compare to Milord Wei's? Wei Hanshan choked on Chu Xiu's words. Feeling Wei Zheduan's gaze on him, he could only angrily snort and say no more. Chu Xiu cupped his hands at Wei Zheduan. Milord, there is a reason for destroying the Jiang family. However, the reason involves a few secrets. I would like to report it to you alone. Hearing this, Wei Hanshan immediately frowned. Without him in front of him, who knew what kind of sophistry this Chu Xiu would spout? However, Wei Zheduan was already very dissatisfied with his interruption, so Wei Hanshan didn't dare say anything else. Looking deeply at Chu Xiu, Wei Zheduan said indifferently, come in with me. Coming to a study, Wei Zheduan said coldly, speak, but let me remind you, think carefully before you speak. Don't think that I am senile. The Guanzhong lands are not in my grasp. I know exactly what you did in the Jiang family. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, Milord, I do not have evidence to destroy the Jiang family. I also know some of the secret rules of the Guanzhong torture room. In destroying the Jiang family this time, I have already plundered all the wealth and resources of the Jiang family. I will offer half of it to Milord. Wei Zheduan froze at these words. He had guessed that Chu Xiu would have a glib tongue to defend himself, but he had not guessed that Chu Xiu would say something like this. Wei Zheduan narrowed his eyes and said, are you bribing me? I did not think that the person that great hero Chu recommended into the Guanzhong torture room would be this kind of person. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, although I was recommended into the Guanzhong torture room by great hero Chu, I am not the kind of person who cannot recognize reality. The previous patrol inspector Fang Jingyuan is a good example. I can be upright and outspoken, I can also be impartial, but the prerequisite is that I have sufficient strength. My strength is insufficient, so this method does not suit me. Wei Zheduan sized up Chu Xiu. In truth, he was somewhat surprised. He had thought that for Chu Xiu to be recommended into the Guanzhong torture room by Chu Yuansheng, he would definitely be someone like Fang Jingyuan. He did not think that Chu Xiu would be able to see it so clearly. However, Wei Zheduan still said coldly, if you want to use half of the Jiang family's assets to fool this matter, I'm afraid you are thinking too simply. I might as well be frank with you. The Jiang family is very tactful, and I am very satisfied. But in the end, you destroyed the Jiang family without my permission. Have you ever taken me seriously? If I do not punish you this time, how will the martial arts forces in Guanxi see me? The Guanzhong torture room has rules. The rules are like this in the open, and the rules are like this in the dark. Chu Xiu laughed coldly in his heart. His immediate superior's appetite was really big. Even half of the Jiang family's assets could not satisfy his appetite. However, the current Wei Zheduan was in line with Chu Xiu's previous conjecture. This old torturer had probably completely abandoned his duty as the torturer of the Guanzhong torture room and only cared about his own interests. However, this was a good thing for Chu Xiu. If Wei Zheduan was really fair, strict, and outspoken, Chu Xiu would not have dared to do things so ruthlessly. Chu Xiu bowed to Wei Zheduan and said with a solemn expression, Sir Wei, rules are rules. This time, I attacked the Jiang family not only because they were disrespectful to me, but also because the Jiang family has been secretly tarnishing your reputation, Sir Wei. The Jiang family gifted Lord Wei a heart-calming and warm jade Buddha, but in the end, the Jiang family secretly used this to intimidate others and committed outrages in Jianzhou Prefecture, all using Lord Wei's name. The Jiang family even said in secret that since the money has been spent, of course they have to maximize your remaining value, Sir Wei. Chapter 166. Wei Zheduan found the words surplus value exceptionally grating on his ears. The main experts of the Guangzhong torture room were the 4 disciplinary officers and the leaders of the punishment bureau. The leader of the punishment bureau needed to be strong enough, while the disciplinary officers needed to be strong enough. Otherwise, they would not be able to control so many inspectors and martial sects under their command. Wei Zheduan's position as the disciplinary officer had something to do with his ability, but it was mostly because of his seniority. Wei Zheduan had been in the Guangzhong torture room for over 100 years. His seniority was even greater than Guan Siyu's. This seniority meant that as long as Wei Zheduan did not make any major mistakes, his position would be more stable than anyone else's. But at the same time, it also meant that he was about to retire. The Guangzhong torture room was not a place to retire. Some of the martial artists in the aristocratic families were old, but because of their bloodline, even if they could not fight, they would still be called ancestors and be revered by their descendants. The sects were also very respectful to these old martial artists. Usually, they would give them the position of Grand Elder, which was a very respectable position. Only the Guangzhong torture room was different. After the martial artists in the Guangzhong torture room retired, they were not allowed to interfere with the power of the Guangzhong torture room. Even their subordinates would cut off all relations with them and be loyal to their new superiors. As the saying went, a new ruler would have a new group of subordinates. This was the rule of the Guangzhong torture room. It allowed the power to always be in the hands of a small number of people. It was not like those large sects and aristocratic families, where there would always be some old people pointing fingers and telling them what to do, affecting the authority of the family head or sect leader. Wei Zheduan was already very old. He would probably retire in a few years. At that time, it would be the turn of a new disciplinary officer. That was why in the last few years of his position as the disciplinary officer, Wei Zheduan's table manners were so unsightly that he had reached the point of being greedy. He did not care about the laws of the Guangzhong torture room at all. He was thinking about his future after he retired. But although he was prepared to give up his power after he retired, he could not tolerate outsiders discussing these things. Wei Zheduan narrowed his eyes and asked Chu Xiu in a cold voice, "Did the Jiang family really say that?" Chu Xiu said righteously, "Of course that's what I said. If Lord Wei doesn't believe me, you can send someone to investigate." Recently, the Jiang clan has been borrowing Lord Wei's name to intimidate others and have done all kinds of things that are out of line. The people of the Jiang clan were not idiots. Of course, they would not say such things in public, but in reality, the Jiang clan had always been doing so. After all, the Jiang clan had paid a huge price to establish a connection with Wei Zheduan. Who knew how long Wei Zheduan would be able to hold the position of the disciplinary officer? Of course, they had to make the best use of their resources. They wanted to obtain as many benefits as possible while Wei Zheduan was still the disciplinary officer. As long as Wei Zheduan sent people to inquire, he would be able to easily find out about these matters. At that time, whether or not the Jiang clan had said such things would no longer be important. In any case, the direct descendants of the Jiang clan were all dead. Their previous actions could represent everything. And at this moment, Chu Xiu took another step forward and said in a low voice, "Lord Wei, this subordinate has something else to say, but I don't know if I should say it." Wei Zheduan narrowed his eyes and said, "What is it?" Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "The Jiang clan dares to say such things not only because the people of the Jiang clan have forgotten their principles for the sake of profit, but also because they see that Lord Wei is about to retire and step down as the disciplinary officer. They no longer have any power, so their fear of you has greatly decreased. Lord Wei, after you step down as the disciplinary officer, you will definitely have to cultivate in the Guangxi region. And the few patrols under your command, forgive me for being blunt, only know how to scheme against each other. I'm afraid that after you step down, they will all be gone." When he heard Chu Xiu's words, Wei Zheduan's expression turned a little ugly. This was because Chu Xiu's words were exactly what he was thinking. Wei Zheduan had always been a very greedy person, including his own people. Thus, he controlled the Guangxi region by relying on his qualifications and some trickery. He didn't have a single trusted aide that he was willing to spend a large sum of money to groom. However, although he didn't have any trusted aides that he could rely on, he was still able to manage the people in the Guanxi region in an orderly manner with his strength and experience. But now that he was about to step down as the disciplinary officer, he realized that he didn't even have a single person that he could rely on. He could hear the meaning behind Chu Xiu's words. It was nothing more than a way of expressing his loyalty. However, Wei Zheduan still sized up Chu Xiu and said indifferently, "You mean that you can become my trusted aide? But your backer is Chu Yuansheng. Why bother coming to me, an old man who is about to retire? Moreover, you, Chu Xiu, aren't easy to deal with. Others are scheming against each other, but won't you be the same as them?" Chu Xiu lowered his head and looked at the ground. He said, "After all, great hero Chu isn't from the Guanzhong torture room. He can't interfere with the specific affairs of the Guanzhong torture room. The county magistrate might as well take charge. I only know that my superior is you, Lord Wei. Instead of currying favor with great hero Chu, I might as well pledge my loyalty to you, Lord Wei." Wei Zheduan narrowed his eyes and subconsciously played with the dragon pattern iron ball in his hand. He said indifferently, "But the crux of the problem is, why should I believe in your loyalty?" Chu Xiu lowered his head and said in a low voice, "The other inspectors all have a foundation in the Guanzhong torture room. I'm afraid they are all waiting for Lord Wei to retire so that they can have a chance to take over, or to cozy up to the new disciplinary officer. In the entire Guanxi branch, only I, Chu Xiu, have no foundation at all. I need Lord Wei's support to have a foothold in the Guanxi region. Without Lord Wei, I'm nothing. Even if you've retired, I still need Lord Wei's connections and prestige in the Guanxi region. So, you don't have to worry about whether I'm loyal to you or not. As long as I have any intention of disobeying you, Lord Wei, you can take everything away from me at any time." Wei Zheduan looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. He had been in the Guanzhong torture room for so many years, and he had seen Wei Zheduan fawning over him. He had also seen Wei Zheduan who feared him or expressed loyalty to him. The only person he had never seen before was someone like Chu Xiu. To show his loyalty, Chu Xiu would directly hand over his own weaknesses to him. However, this feeling was very good. Just as Chu Xiu had said, he had no foundation in the Guanxi region. Just like today's matter, Wei Zheduan could deal with him or not. It all depended on his mood and attitude. Now that the other inspectors were fully fledged and had their own foundations, they were no longer someone an old man like him who was about to retire could casually deal with. So, as long as he accepted Chu Xiu's loyalty, it was equivalent to him gaining an inspector who was completely under his control. Wei Zheduan put his dragon pattern iron ball on the table and said in a deep voice, "It's very simple for you to pledge loyalty to me, and it's also very simple for me to accept your loyalty. However, the crux of the problem is, what can I get from you, and what can you get from me?" Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "What I want is only to obtain Milord's trust. Just like this time, as long as Milord can help me deal with the matters within the rules, then I will definitely bring Milord even more benefits. Half of the Jiang family's assets is just the beginning." Wei Zheduan looked deeply at Chu Xiu and was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "I hope my choice is not wrong, and you'd better not disappoint me. Please rest assured, Lord. I will definitely not disappoint you." Chu Xiu lowered his head, a faint smile appearing at the corners of his mouth. He knew that Wei Zheduan would definitely agree in the end, because compared to what he needed Wei Zheduan needed him more. For a torture master who was about to retire and lose some power, Wei Zheduan had already given up on all the rules of the Guanzhong torture room. As long as it could bring him benefits, he would greedily swallow it up. Now that Chu Xiu could bring him benefits, he could not and would not refuse. At this time, outside the meeting hall, Wei Hanshan was already a little anxious. Only the heavens knew what Chu Xiu had said to Wei Zheduan and why the two of them had not come out after so long. At this time, Wei Zheduan and Chu Xiu walked back into the meeting hall. Chu Xiu's face was expressionless, but Wei Hanshan was already a little anxious. The calmer Chu Xiu was, the more it showed that this matter would not develop in the direction he expected. As expected, Wei Zheduan directly said to the crowd, Chu Xiu, I have already asked about this matter. The Jiang family secretly smuggled contraband and violated the rules of the Guangzhong torture room. Furthermore, they used my name to commit crimes outside. They should be killed. Chu Xiu, a newly appointed patrol inspector, was able to dig out this cancer of the Jiang family. Not only should he not be punished for this matter, he should be rewarded instead. When they heard this, everyone's expressions suddenly changed. What did Chu Xiu say to Wei Jiuduan to actually make Wei Jiuduan stand on his side so clearly? Wei Hanshan even stood up and said with an expression of dissatisfaction, Lord, this Chu Xiu does not follow the rules when he does things. He has already brazenly done it. Is this still not a problem? Wei Jiuduan's expression immediately darkened. He looked coldly at Wei Hanshan and said, Are you teaching me how to do things? Do you need me to go talk to Master Guan and give up my position as torture officer to you right now? When he heard this, Wei Hanshan could only sullenly sit back down and said in a muffled voice, This subordinate does not dare. Wei Hanshan's connections in the Guanxi region could be said to be deep-rooted. Other than the Guangzhong torture room, he even had connections in the Guangzhong martial world. However, no matter how strong his connections were, Wei Jiuduan was still the Guanxi torture officer. He was someone who held great power. If he said something was right, even if it was wrong, it was still right. At least before Wei Jiuduan officially retired and relinquished his power, Wei Hanshan did not dare to directly confront Wei Jiuduan. Chapter 167. The 5 inspectors present didn't know what Chu Xiu had said to Wei Jiuduan, but they knew that since Wei Jiuduan had made a decision, Chu Xiu didn't do anything wrong, then he didn't do anything wrong. Whoever dared to object would be slapping Wei Jiuduan in the face. Other than Wei Hanshan, the others didn't have any direct conflicts with Chu Xiu. Of course, they wouldn't provoke Wei Jiuduan at this time. Looking at everyone present, Wei Jiuduan said indifferently, Since it's like this, then disperse. Remember to manage your own territory. Don't worry about other people's matters. Actually, Wei Jiuduan had a good impression of Wei Hanshan. Although this subordinate of his had always been a little scheming, he knew how to be filial to him and did things very well on the surface. But in the end, he was a little muddle-headed today and actually dared to refute his orders in front of everyone. This needed to be taught a lesson. Chu Xiu revealed a trace of a smile, stood up, and cupped his hands. Yes, sir. After saying that, Chu Xiu was the first to leave the meeting hall. The others also left one after another. Only Wei Hanshan left with a gloomy expression. After everyone left, a young man in his 30s walked into the meeting hall and bowed respectfully to Wei Jiuduan. Foster father. Wei Jiuduan looked at the young man in front of him and nodded. Yang Ling, how is the matter with the sects in Last Sun Prefecture? Yang Ling said, It has been handled properly. Those sects think that foster father is about to retire, so they have some ideas that they shouldn't have. This child has already brought people to teach them a lesson. Wei Jiuduan nodded and said, That's right. Some people just need to be taught a lesson. Yang Ling paused and asked, Foster father, I saw everything clearly just now. It was clearly Chu Xiu who broke the rules. Why are you still covering for him? Wei Jiuduan glanced at him and revealed a faint smile. Why? Are you afraid that Chu Xiu will affect your position? I don't dare. Yang Ling quickly cupped his hands. Wei Jiuduan said indifferently, You don't need to think too much. From now on, Chu Xiu is my man. However, he won't affect your position. After all, Chu Xiu is just an outsider, but you are my adopted son who I have raised for more than 10 years. Due to the rules of the Guangzhong torture room, I can't help you get to a higher position for the time being. Even Master Guan's disciple, Yuqi, can only be an ordinary secret agent in the criminal division. Even if I wanted you to be an inspector, the rules wouldn't allow it. After I retire, I will support you to the position of patrol and let this Chu Xiu assist you. At that time, even if the new penal officer takes office, there will still be a place for you in Guanxi. Yang Ling immediately showed a grateful look and said, Thank you, foster father. However, although Yang Ling expressed his gratitude, he was sneering in his heart. He had been at Wei Zhoduan's beck and call for more than 10 years. How could he not know what his foster father was like? He said he was worried about the rules of the Guanzhong torture room, but in reality, he didn't want him to be in power. Yuqi was indeed an ordinary secret agent in the criminal division, but he acted on Guan Siyu's warrant. His position in the criminal division was second only to the leaders. Yang Ling could only listen to Wei Zhoduan's orders. When Wei Zhoduan needed him, he could borrow Wei Zhoduan's power and strength. It was equivalent to being an errand boy for Wei Zhoduan. In the end, he had been running for more than 10 years. He had long been dissatisfied with this situation. However, other than being dissatisfied, he could only endure. He could only endure until Wei Zhoduan retired. Only then could he truly be in power. At this time, in Wei Hanshan's mansion in the Shangzhou prefecture, Wei Hanshan, who had returned to his mansion, was so angry that he smashed several cups. "Old fool, you're about to retire and leave, yet you're still playing this game with me." When he thought of Wei Zhoduan's attitude, Wei Hanshan was so angry that the roots of his teeth itched. Among the patrol envoys in the Guanxi area, Wei Hanshan wasn't the strongest, but he was the best at making money among those of the same rank. Not only did he manage the Shangzhou and Qinzhou prefectures in good order, but he also gave Wei Zhoduan a lot of filial piety. He also used his status in the Jianghu to help Wei Zhoduan a lot. However, today, he sided with Chu Xiu in front of everyone and even gave him a warning. This made Wei Hanshan feel unusually angry. However, he had also been Wei Zhoduan's subordinate for more than 10 years, so he knew what kind of person his superior was. Wei Zhoduan was naturally suspicious, unkind, and greedy. He treated his foster son like this, let alone others. This time, Wei Zhoduan was standing on Chu Xiu's side because Chu Xiu had taken out enough money to move Wei Zhoduan. Wei Zhoduan was also probably wary of Wei Zhoduan's influence, so he gave him a warning. However, the crux of the problem was that Wei Zhoduan was about to retire and give up his position, yet he still firmly held on to his power and didn't give his subordinates the slightest chance. This was a little too much. Most importantly, this matter was a big blow to Wei Hanshan. He was prepared to deal with Chu Xiu, but in the end, not only did Chu Xiu not receive any punishment, but he even received a reward. Wei Hanshan, on the other hand, was disgraced. Not only would this matter affect his position in the hearts of his subordinates, but it would also affect the prestige of the forces under his jurisdiction. Not only did the Jiang clan not receive many benefits, but they also caused trouble for themselves. If he had known earlier, Wei Hanshan wouldn't have gotten involved in this mess. Of course, it was too late for Wei Hanshan to regret now. At this time, one of his trusted subordinates pushed open the door and entered. When he saw this scene, he immediately shrunk his neck and swallowed back the words he wanted to say. Wei Hanshan looked at his hesitant appearance and couldn't help but scold him. "If you have something to say, then say it. Don't bother me at this time." The martial artist hurriedly said, "This subordinate actually wanted to say, since Lord Wei doesn't care about this matter, why don't we report this matter to Master Guan? Chu Xiu's status is special. Although he was recommended by great hero Chu, because of this, he has received a lot of attention. Although Master Guan won't easily care about the matters of the patrol inspector, Master Guan will definitely care about Chu Xiu. After all, he has great hero Chu behind him." Wei Hanshan frowned and said, "What do you know? Go, go, go. Don't cause trouble here." After throwing that bailiff out, Wei Hanshan's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. He was actually a little tempted. As the hallmaster of the Guanzhong torture room, Guan Siyu was concerned about the matters of the entire Guanzhong torture room. The people he directly interacted with were the disciplinary officers and the leaders of the punishment bureau. He naturally wouldn't ask about the small matters of the patrol inspectors. However, Chu Xiu was personally recommended by Chu Yuansheng. Perhaps Guan Siyu would ask about it? However, the only thing Wei Hanshan was worried about was Wei Zhoduan's attitude. After all, he was going to report Chu Xiu over Wei Zhoduan. This was equivalent to slapping Wei Jiuduan in the face and criticizing Wei Jiuduan for not doing his job. If Chu Xiu was punished in the end, then Wei Jiuduan would also be reprimanded. But when he thought of Wei Jiuduan's attitude today, Wei Hanzhan sneered in his heart. Since you're heartless, then don't blame me for being unjust. However, Wei Jiuduan had stayed in the Guanxi area for close to a century. He had accumulated too much prestige for too long. Wei Hanzhan didn't dare to brazenly report Wei Jiuduan. Hence, Wei Hanzhan planned to report this matter anonymously to the disciplinary hall's headquarters. He would first remove himself from the picture. Thinking up to this point, Wei Hanzhan personally ordered a few of his trusted subordinates to secretly pass the message to the discipline hall headquarters. Several days later, inside the disciplinary hall's headquarters, Guan Siyu looked at the news that came from below. His eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Someone actually sent a report letter to him. This was really rare. This was something that had not happened for many years. Although the Guangzhong area wasn't small, it had a strict structure. Each level governed the next. It was very rare for this kind of situation of skipping a level to report happened. In the end, someone actually leaked the news to him. Clearly, there was a problem with the disciplinary hall's subordinates. They actually couldn't control their subordinates. Originally, this kind of matter that involved a low-level patrol inspector wouldn't be sent to Guan Siyu. If he had to manage everything, then wouldn't Guan Siyu be extremely busy? There were many people in the disciplinary hall's headquarters who were responsible for helping Guan Siyu deal with information and official documents. After analyzing and filtering, they would report the information that really required Guan Siyu's decision to Guan Siyu. This time, when Chu Xiu's matter was sent to Guan Siyu, it was really as Wei Hanzhan thought. Because Chu Xiu had been recommended to the Guangzhong torture room by Chu Yuansheng, his status was special, so he was sent to Guan Siyu. After reading the news, Guan Siyu called out softly, "Yuqi, come in." Hearing this, Yuqi pushed open the door and entered. He said respectfully, "Master, what's the matter?" Guan Siyu handed the news to Yuqi and said, "What do you think of this news?" After Yuqi read the news, a strange look appeared in his eyes. Clearly, he hadn't expected that Chu Xiu would cause such a huge commotion the moment he took office. Furthermore, his actions were decisive and ruthless. He didn't seem like a martialist that Chu Yuansheng had recommended to the Guangzhong torture room. It looked like he had been wrong. Although Chu Xiu had been recommended to the Guangzhong torture room by Chu Yuansheng, he was definitely not the same kind of person as Chu Yuansheng. Yuqi put the news aside and raised his head to say to Guan Siyu, "Master, I'm afraid Wei Jiuduan is getting old. He can't even control his subordinates. I'm afraid we have to change the disciplinary hall's candidate." Guan Siyu asked for his opinion, but Yuqi didn't mention Chu Xiu at all. Instead, he directly talked about Wei Jiuduan. This made Guan Siyu reveal a satisfied expression. "You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."